The Hogwarts professor mixed into Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226. Lockhart is the most grateful. The Crooked Goo-Goo. New York City. A certain Hydra underground base. Alexander Pierce, the head of Hydra, looked at the screen in front of him expressionlessly. On the screen, the scene of missiles, airplanes, etc. disappearing was repeated repeatedly. Next to Pierce stood the bald Agent Sitwell. What did the intelligence department say? Hearing his boss's question, Sitwell hurriedly said, "Sir, according to the analysis of the intelligence department, the other party is suspected of mastering large-scale space teleportation. It is recommended to use sneak attacks as much as possible in the future, and don't give the other party time to react, otherwise there will be basically no solution after the space teleportation is turned on. Unless the scientific research department develops a technological device that can confine space." Hearing this, Pierce rubbed his eyebrows helplessly. This wizard professor is really tricky. The possibility of failure in this test operation is indeed not small, which he had expected. Their main purpose is to test the other party's strength through this operation. As a result, the other party was too easy to solve because they mastered the power of space, so he didn't get much valuable information at all. Moreover, when thinking about the power of space, Pierce felt a headache. The Hydra branch focuses on SHIELD, and the power of space is not involved much. If he wanted to attack, he could only prepare for a sneak attack, like he did with the Dark Blue Dodo before, and not give the other party a chance to use his abilities. Otherwise there would be no solution. And judging from the current information, the other party could not determine his location at all. Even if he wanted to sneak attack, he could not find a chance to do so. After thinking about it, Pierce had a general idea in his mind, and waved to Sitwell to retreat. Then, he took out his mobile phone, found a number composed of special symbols, clicked it, and waited quietly. "Pierce, what do you want to talk to me about?" A cold voice came from the phone. "Daniel, I heard that you are looking for an alien." Pierce asked Daniel Hotwell on the phone. "Yes, Pierce, do you have information about aliens?" Daniel's voice became eager. As if sensing Daniel's inner desire, Pierce said slowly, "I have a suspected alien in my hand. I can give it to you. But, tell me, what do you want?" Hearing Pierce's tone, Daniel asked directly. In response, Pierce nodded with satisfaction and continued, "I heard that you have been studying an alien with spatial abilities. I need all his information, including your means of restricting his spatial movement." Lockhart's villa. The study was originally empty, but a red flame-colored halo appeared. Then, a man walked out. It was Lockhart. On his shoulder stood a dark blue ball escape bird, Goo-Goo. Behind him followed Peter, the Spider-Man in a red and blue uniform. After Lockhart waved his hand to close the portal, he looked at Peter, who was curiously looking around. Gold coin. With Lockhart's call, the house elf gold coin appeared in front of the two of them in an instant. Peter saw the strange creature with a small body and fluttering big ears, and his eyes revealed curiosity and surprise. Then, he heard Mr. Lockhart order, "Gold coin, go prepare some high-energy food. We will eat in the restaurant later." "Okay, master." Gold coin looked at Peter curiously, and after hearing the master's order, he replied loudly. Under Peter's gaze, he turned around and disappeared. Seeing Peter's curious eyes, Lockhart smiled and introduced, "This is the house elf gold coin, which is responsible for some housework in my house. Let's go to the restaurant. I believe you and Goo-Goo are hungry after the battle just now." Hearing what Lockhart said, Peter touched his stomach awkwardly. He was indeed a little hungry. At first, he bought a lot of cakes, but they were all eaten by Goo-Goo. After running for his life, he had consumed a lot of physical strength. Later, he bought some more food. Originally, he planned to let Goo-Goo eat first, and he treated his injuries before eating. As a result, the enemy caught up before he treated his injuries. Seeing Peter's actions, Lockhart smiled, opened the door of the study, waved to Goo-Goo and Peter, and walked to the hall outside. Goo-Goo, Goo-Goo, Goo-Goo. A blue light flashed, and Goo teleported to Peter's shoulder and called in his ear. It was as if he was telling Peter that the breeder also liked to eat delicious food, and the food he prepared must taste great. He could eat as much as he wanted when the time came. He didn't have to worry about it. He could eat as much as he could. Hearing the meaning of Goo words, Peter laughed softly and touched Goo head affectionately. He followed Lockhart down the stairs and walked to the dining room. Soon, Peter walked into a spacious dining room. He saw a rectangular dining table in the middle. The surface of the dining table was mainly light blue, with large and small patterns outlined on it, which looked very exquisite. On the surface, some cups, plates, knives and forks and other tableaux were neatly placed. The overall look was very neat and unusually clean. Lockhart stood in front of the dining table, waved to Peter gently, and said, "Peter, come here. It's past noon now. Gold Coin will prepare the meal in a while." Hearing what Lockhart said, Peter sat at the dining table a little stiffly, as if he was eating at someone else's house for the first time. Seeing Peter's somewhat stiff appearance, Lockhart smiled, stretched out his wand, and tapped it lightly. The empty cup in front of Peter was filled with more than half a cup of water at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing this magical scene, Peter's eyes were a little surprised. "Peter, I'm tired from the battle just now. Drink some water first. The food will be here soon." Hearing Mr. Lockhart's voice, he nodded and took a sip of the cup with both hands. He found that the water tasted sweeter than the water he drank before, so he subconsciously drank a few more sips. Goo goo. Goo goo. After seeing this, Goo landed on the table next to Peter and called out to Lockhart. Hearing what Goo meant, Lockhart's face showed a hint of amusement. He stretched out his wand and pointed it at the cup in front of Goo. Soon, it was also filled with more than half a cup of water. Seeing this, Goo also opened his mouth and drank the water. Seeing the actions of the man and the beast, Lockhart's face floated a faint smile. They were all children. One was just younger in mental age, and the other was slightly older. Almost not long after, Jinbi placed a plate with a strong meaty aroma on the dining table. In the plate, there were a lot of bamboo sticks, and gradually on them, one after another barbecued meat was skewered, and they were all large. Smelling the rich aroma from the plate, Peter swallowed his saliva subconsciously. Seeing this, Lockhart directly greeted, "Peter, this is made of Tebow warthog meat. It is my favorite food. It contains a lot of energy and tastes good. Try it." Hearing Mr. Lockhart speak, Peter took a look, picked up a bamboo stick, and took a careful bite. Well, the meat is very tender and melts in the mouth. It's so delicious. Peter's eyes lit up, and he subconsciously increased his chewing speed. Not long after, he finished the whole skewer of barbecue. After seeing the empty bamboo stick, Peter looked at Lockhart opposite him with some embarrassment, and said hesitantly, "Mr. Lockhart, then you eat too." He felt embarrassed to eat alone with the other party watching. After seeing this, Lockhart smiled and replied, "It's okay, I don't need it. I've eaten before. Eat more. At your age, it's time to grow up." Goo, who was next to him, was no longer polite. He waved his wings and used magic to put a skewer of barbecue in front of him. He bit off a big piece of meat and started eating. Before, the guy Jinbi didn't let him eat more meat. Every time, he only had a little meat. This time, he must eat more. Goo goo. After seeing Peter next to him stop eating and let the breeder eat a little, Goo waved his wings and called a few times, telling Peter to eat boldly. The breeder had enough meat. Eat as much as you can. This opportunity is rare. When Lockhart heard what Goo meant, a smile appeared on his face. It seemed that Goo really regarded Peter as a friend, or perhaps he had grown up. Before, when facing food, Goo dared to compete with the little snake for food. If the little snake hadn't been generous and didn't care, Goo would have been taught a lesson long ago. After hearing this, Peter smiled. After thinking about it, he didn't care. He picked up the barbecue on the plate and ate it bite by bite. Millimeters. It smells so good and tastes so good. Lockhart poured himself a cup of tea and drank it while watching the man and the beast eat. While watching, he was thinking about how to persuade Peter to stay here longer. Millimeters. It was mainly to thank Peter for saving Goo, and it had nothing to do with Peter's blood. He is a good man. and would never repay kindness with enmity. Of course, if the other party is willing, that's another matter. Soon, the gold coins continued to serve some clear soup, fried meat, fruits and vegetables, etc. Gugu was very excited to eat, and Peter was also very happy and comfortable to eat. He found that what Gugu said was right. Mr. Lockhart was a gourmet and the dishes here were very delicious. Moreover, he actually found that some of the meat here would make him feel a warm current in his body, and he had a vague feeling of fullness. You know, he eats a lot. He usually doesn't eat enough, and even if he buys some sweets, he is only half full at most. Sure enough, in the wizarding world, even food is good stuff. Delicious. It's really delicious. Gugu. Gugu next to him saw that Peter was eating happily, and he also excitedly barked a few more times, telling Peter to eat more, eat more. Then, it began to eat and drink. Lockhart saw his pet greeting Peter like this, and suddenly he felt strange in his heart. It was as if the baby he raised at home had his elbows turned outward. However, he also had a definite idea in his heart. After a while, Peter lay on the chair, touched his belly, and a bright smile appeared on his face. It was the first time he ate so full, and it was delicious. Gugu next to him also sat on the dining table, waved his wings and touched himself, his round belly, and a comfortable smile appeared on his little face. I haven't eaten so well for a long time. After seeing the actions of the two, Lockhart smiled. Then, he said to Peter slowly, "Peter, I want to discuss something with you. Look, how about you help me watch Gugu exercise for a while? P.S. Dear readers, I'm very sorry. I encountered some things in the afternoon and was delayed. I wrote a lot more for this chapter. I will update 4 chapters today and 5 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 227, The Silk of the Acromantula, Revenge of Lockhart." Peter, who was savoring the delicious food, suddenly heard Mr. Lockhart's words and shouted, a little surprised and confused. After hearing this, Lockhart smiled and explained, "Peter, I have a lot of things to do, and I can't take care of Gugu usually, and you can see that Gugu is a bit greedy. This time, such a big commotion is inseparable from his habit of eating. And, look at how fat he is now. It's not good to be too fat. Think about it, if you become a fat man, what will May think?" Hearing this, Peter suddenly thought of his good friend Ned's fat appearance, and then a fat version of himself appeared in his mind. He felt a chill, and nodded in agreement. Most women have requirements for appearance, so it's better to be thinner. Seeing Peter nod, Lockhart continued, "So, I have a most basic requirement for it, that is, to keep running every day, and lose more weight. Of course, there is also strength. He also needs to improve it. He should practice the magic that should be practiced." At this point, Lockhart's tone was a little bit funny. "I taught Gugu how to cast magic before, but after learning for most of the day, it only learned how to use magic to eat food, while none of the others succeeded. But when I saw you fighting just now, Gugu seemed to have cast magic for you, and even teleported with you. So, I feel you are a very suitable candidate." Hearing this, Peter subconsciously felt something was wrong, and then he realized something and asked, "Mr. Lockhart, you saw us fighting before. Then why didn't you stop it?" Hearing this, Lockhart's mouth curled up. Everything was as expected. After a slight pause, as if he was thinking about the content, he said, "I didn't take action in time before, mainly to help you clean up the mess. You may not know the huge impact caused by the plane chasing you and Gugu. If you are not careful, Gugu will be fine, but you may become the center of public opinion and the target of cyberbullying on the whole network." At this point, Lockhart said seriously, "You haven't experienced this kind of thing yet. If you experience it, you will know how troublesome it is. Whether it is you, your family, or your friends, they will be affected. Even," Lockhart said with some meaning, "with your current identity, if you are exposed, may." After hearing this, Peter clenched his hands tightly, feeling a little nervous, fearing that what Lockhart said would become a reality. And Lockhart continued to comfort him, "Don't worry, I have asked Tony to help suppress the online information. At the same time, I have cast magic on the people I saw before and experienced their related memories. So, you don't have to worry about this. You can be your Spider-Man with peace of mind. There will be no problem." Hearing what Mr. Lockhart said, Peter felt relieved and said gratefully, thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Peter, since you saved Goo Goo, these are what I should do, Lockhart said gently. Then, Lockhart waved his hand, and under Peter's gaze, the plates, knives, forks and other tableaux on the table were all moved to the side. In the middle, a large number of white silk threads appeared, neatly placed on the table, like a white cloth. For some reason, Peter felt that the white silk thread was very kind, and subconsciously reached out to touch it, and felt inexplicably familiar and kind. Goo Goo, Goo Goo, Goo Goo, who had been listening silently beside him, saw the white silk thread taken out by the breeder. His eyes lit up, and he flapped his wings, and a blue light flashed. He teleported to the white silk thread, touched it, and found that he couldn't recognize it, and it was not delicious. He called out, flapped his wings, and a blue light flashed, and he returned to his original position. After hearing the conversation between the breeder and Peter just now, it felt very entangled. It didn't dislike Peter, it even liked him, or was grateful to him. After all, he fed him a lot of delicious food, and saved its life. But it felt repulsive to exercise, run, and practice magic, and even thought about telling the breeder that it didn't want to do it. But when it thought of what happened before, Peter's face covered in blood and dust, and the breeder scolding it, it suddenly couldn't open its mouth. It could only listen silently, struggling in its heart. Lockhart took a look at Goo Goo, and through the contract, he roughly guessed what Goo Goo was thinking, and smiled in his heart. Sure enough, a child like Goo Goo would grow up very slowly without experiencing some things and setbacks. Then, watching Peter reach out to touch the spider silk in front of him, Lockhart introduced, Peter, I see that your ability seems to be related to spiders. This is the silk produced by the giant spider. It is a magical creature, so these silk threads are also magical materials, and the quality is very good. It's a thank you for saving Goo Goo. I hope it will be of some help to you. After hearing this, Peter suddenly flashed a hint of surprise, and said in surprise, really? Mr. Lockhart? He just felt that these silk threads were very unusual. If it was really as Mr. Lockhart said, it would be very helpful to him. If he could research new spider silk with these silk threads, his strength would probably be further improved. If spider silk has other special abilities, it would be a huge surprise for him. Goo Goo, Goo Goo. After hearing this, Goo Goo directly flapped his wings, landed in front of Peter, and called a few times. It seemed to say that the breeder had a lot of these, so you're welcome, just take them. After hearing this, Lockhart smiled and nodded. As the saying goes, if you take something from someone, you'll be grateful, and if you eat something from someone, you'll be soft-hearted. Just now, he reminded him of his help, and now he gave him spider silk, and all in the form of gratitude. Most people would be embarrassed to refuse, not to mention that this thing should be of great help to Spider-Man Peter. Seeing his expression just now, you can tell. After accepting the gift, it is difficult to refuse some of his requests. After seeing Peter put away the spider silk of the acromantula, Lockhart asked again, Peter, do you have any doubts about my proposal just now? Peter, who had just put away the spider silk, said hesitantly, Mr. Lockhart, I have no objection to helping you supervise Goo Goo, but I may be in class, and cannot supervise my aunt all the time. Hearing this, Lockhart smiled slightly, and waved his hand gently, saying, don't worry, Peter, I'm not asking you to supervise Goo Goo all the time. You can just focus on your own things at other times. You just need to let him run, exercise, and practice magic at a fixed time every day. It won't take too long, but you must let him continue for a long time. Hearing this, Peter nodded. He felt that there was no problem with this, and he really liked Goo Goo. Then, he heard, since you agreed, Peter, as a reward for helping Goo Goo to exercise, I thought about it. In a few days, I will give you a set of magic equipment made of 8-eyed giant spider silk. At the same time, I see that you like to eat meals made of gold coins. Come directly to my house, and eat with Goo Goo. By the way, help me control its appetite. Study. Lockhart sat on his desk, thinking about Peter's performance just now, and nodded with satisfaction. Now he has established a stable relationship with Spider-Man Peter. Later, it depends on how to let the other party reasonably build a blood supply relationship. After thinking for a while, Lockhart's eyes condensed. Now, he is considering how to deal with Hydra. He is a person who always takes revenge, and the other party's previous actions have angered him. Chapter 228 Infiltrating SHIELD. As for Hydra, in fact, Lockhart had already thought about it when he met SHIELD. After all, the current SHIELD can actually be said to be the headquarters of Hydra. It would be strange if Lockhart knew this and didn't take it to heart. However, he didn't actually intervene too much in Hydra. He just wanted to let it go, because some things still need Hydra to promote. For example, if there was no cooperation from Hydra, how could he plunder the essence of SHIELD from the Middle Bureau? And the so-called essence, in addition to some information and resources, the most important thing is the SHIELD agent himself. Every SHIELD agent is carefully cultivated by SHIELD. Their minds, experience, and abilities dare not be said to be top-notch, but basically belong to the upper middle level. And they have all experienced bloody baptisms, undergone rigorous training, have strong execution, and are definitely not saints. The most important thing is that there are many of them. Whether it is the Harry Potter world or the Marvel world, he needs such people to do things. For example, keep an eye on some people, search for some resources, deal with the Muggle government, or cooperate with wizards to do something. Even, Lockhart has begun to plan how to make ordinary people have certain extraordinary abilities. At that time, he can use it with SHIELD agents, and it will definitely play a big role in some small battles. If some SHIELD agents have good spiritual talents, it will be better. Natural combatants are seedlings. Therefore, in Lockhart's eyes, SHIELD is actually a delicious cake. Obviously, under the watchful eyes of the Ancient One, he can't do it directly, otherwise he will be regarded as an evil camp, and Lockhart will be a muggle. But the other party was brought down by Hydra. As a friend, he helped to clean up the mess and let his SHIELD friend be the director. Puppet. Isn't this good? This is also why Lockhart maintains a good trading relationship with SHIELD. Isn't this just to lay the groundwork for the future? He never does things for free, including giving gifts, and his purpose is always clear. However, Hydra's actions have made him a little dissatisfied. The pursuit of the planes was already a bit excessive. The other side even used missiles, or a large number of missiles, to bomb. If Lockhart remained indifferent, he would really become a soft persimmon that could be manipulated by anyone. With a flash of thought, Lockhart made a decision in his heart. SHIELD, Trident Building, Director's Office. Nick Fury sat at his desk, looking at the man and woman in front of him with an indifferent expression. Hill, tell me, there were a total of 9 missiles over New York City. The matter was over, and we only received the information. What is your regulatory department doing? Nick Fury sat in a chair, looking at his deputy director Mariah Hill, and asked in a dissatisfied tone. Director. Hearing Nick Fury's question, Hill was silent for a while, and then slowly said after a moment, you are right, this is indeed the negligence of the regulatory department. Someone in the bureau deliberately blocked the news. I have arranged for someone to investigate. Hearing this, Nick Fury was still a little dissatisfied. 3 days. You must give me a satisfactory result in 3 days. Okay, Director. Hill was silent for a while, and then slowly nodded. 3 days. A little tense. In order to ensure accuracy, the people in the regulatory department must check it, which takes a lot of time. If other departments want to check it, it will also take a lot of time. But if we squeeze in time, it can still be completed. When she thought of this, Hill was furious. She was in charge of the regulatory department, but there was such a big leak. This was a slap in her face. After seeing Hill's work was done, Nick Fury asked Coulson next to him. Coulson, you are in charge of the wizard professor's affairs. Now tell me the information you have. Okay, Director. Coulson nodded and began to say, according to the analysis of the intelligence department, these 9 missiles came from the military. 1 of them exploded on the Atlantic coast, and there is no clue about the other 8. What is certain is that the wizard professor has the ability to transfer space on a large scale. Listening to Coulson's meaningless introduction, Nick Fury interrupted and asked, Tell me, has the intelligence department made a plan for the wizard professor to infiltrate SHIELD? And after this incident, what do you predict the wizard professor's reaction will be? Hearing the director's question, Coulson paused and then slowly said, Director, because SHIELD currently does not have an effective means of confining space, the current plan is to conduct thorough inspections through cameras, heat detectors and other equipment. If there is an abnormality, an alarm will be issued immediately, allowing us to respond to the infiltrating enemies in time. This is the current plan. Having said that, Coulson saw Nick Fury nodded slightly, and then continued, as for the wizard professor's reaction. According to our prediction of the character's personality traits, the other party will obviously take revenge. However, Coulson paused slightly and continued, according to the previous information analysis, the wizard professor has the ability to influence people's minds and memories. So, the wizard professor is likely to obtain the other party's information and take action directly. Hearing this, Nick Fury nodded secretly, thought about it, and said directly, Coulson, you come to contact the wizard professor and try to cooperate with him to explore the roots of this organization together. Trident Building, Mirror Space. At this moment, Lockhart is strolling in the mirror space. The surrounding environment is the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. Trident Building. Mirror space is a reflection of reality. What exists in reality, as long as it does not involve too many extraordinary factors, can generally be reproduced in the mirror space. Generally speaking, there is no one inside the mirror space, only objects. But for a wizard who deeply studies the magic of the mirror space, they can completely spy on everything in reality through the mirror space. Even if they want to directly pull people, it is not difficult. For Lockhart, since he knows that S.H.I.E.L.D. is the headquarters of Hydra, then he doesn't need to think too much. It's better to solve it directly from the source. Of course, he knows that as the headquarters of the agents, S.H.I.E.L.D. must have a very strict monitoring mechanism. So just in case, he specifically chose the mirror space instead of being invisible. Now Lockhart is on the 8th floor of the Trident Building, according to the information just obtained from the minds of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Here is the information of the intelligence department. Lockhart believes that as the core of S.H.I.E.L.D., the intelligence department must be of great concern to Hydra. Maybe, here, the key figures of Hydra can be found. Lockhart looked around, watching a large number of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents constantly sorting out the information in their hands, or making phone calls, constantly recording their communications, etc. Suddenly, Lockhart's eyes condensed, and he saw a familiar bald agent. Chapter 229, Hydra's Trap, Hypnosis and Magic. Jasper Sitwell, the head of intelligence. In the mirror space, Lockhart looked at the bald agent wearing glasses in front of him, or more precisely, the badge on his chest, with a look of inquiry in his eyes. If he remembered correctly, this guy seemed to be from Hydra, and his status was not low. The reason why Lockhart was impressed by him was that he was the same as Nick Fury, with a bald head and glasses, which made him very recognizable. Well, the most important thing was that according to the original plot, he knelt the fastest. After being caught by the captain, he revealed a lot of Hydra intelligence with a simple threat. He can be called a hero. A hero is a hero who knows the times. After seeing Agent Sitwell, Lockhart basically had to determine the target, followed him, and watched him communicate with some intelligence personnel, talk, and take some documents. Soon, Sitwell may have finished the work in his hands, so he turned around and returned to his office. Click. With the sound of a door closing, Lockhart watched Sitwell walk to his desk, turn on the computer, and lower his head to organize the information. Seeing this, Lockhart was not in a hurry. He looked up at the information the other party had sorted out, and his eyes were fixed. Tracing the source of 9 missiles over New York, a simple scan revealed that the article mentioned the military. This made Lockhart a little confused. How could it be related to the military again? Then, he didn't think about it anymore. The person was right in front of him. If he interrogated him properly, wouldn't he know? At this moment, Sitwell was looking at the document in front of him quickly. This was the missile information that the intelligence department had just obtained from the military. He needed to sort it out and then hand it over to his boss Phil Coulson. Just as he opened the computer document and was about to enter the relevant information, suddenly, click, 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 A sound of a broken mirror sounded from his ears, and the next moment, it suddenly disappeared. Sitwell wondered if he was too tired recently and had auditory hallucinations. However, looking down at the document below, he was shocked to find that for some reason the text on the document had been flipped, as if he was seeing it through a mirror. Then, Sitwell felt a black shadow appear in front of him, and quickly raised his head to look. "Wizard Professor," Sitwell exclaimed, subconsciously reading out the other party's code name and shield, and then quickly changed his mouth. "Professor Lockhart." Looking around, he asked uneasily, "Professor Lockhart, do you have something to do with us at SHIELD? Do you need me to contact Chief Coulson?" Lockhart looked at the bald Agent Sitwell in front of him, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. The moment he saw him just now, Lockhart performed a simplified version of the Divine Mind acquisition, wanting to see the other party's first reaction when he saw him. He originally expected fear. After all, the mission target came to the door. How could he relax? But he never expected that the other party's emotions were just pure shock, mixed with a trace of uneasiness. It didn't look like the Hydra that specifically targeted him with missiles. This aroused Lockhart's curiosity. It was true that the other party was Hydra. Could it be that Sitwell didn't know about the things that were done to him? With a flash of thought, Lockhart looked at Sitwell in front of him and didn't want to talk nonsense directly. He felt a little bad in his heart. He stretched out his wand and pointed it at Sitwell. At this moment, Sitwell saw Professor Lockhart in front of him, and his heart was full of doubts and uneasiness. Relying on the instinct of training, he secretly took out a pistol from his waist, as if he would start to plot if something went wrong. However, bang! Lockhart waved his wand lightly, and in an instant, Sitwell felt a huge force slipping through his hand, and the pistol flew directly into the distance. Then, he soared into the air, and his limbs seemed to be bound, unable to move at all. "Professor Lockhart, calm down. You must calm down. I have no ill intentions. My boss Coulson has a good relationship with you. You remember, I'm his subordinate, and I have always had a good relationship with Coulson." After seeing that he was controlled, Sitwell was a little flustered, and he opened his mouth quickly, fearing that the wizard professor in front of him would start to torture, or even kill him. Looking at Sitwell's performance, Lockhart frowned. What happened? Wasn't the other party an agent of Hydra, or had the plot changed? With his thoughts turning, Lockhart controlled Sitwell to float in front of him, watching him open his mouth and shout, and slightly turning his wand. The next moment, Sitwell's mouth was tightly closed, without a single noise. However, his eyes still revealed panic and uneasiness. "Agent Sitwell, you should know that someone is bombarding me with missiles." Lockhart stared at Sitwell's eyes and said slowly, guiding his thinking direction, "According to my investigation, the other party is from Hydra." When Lockhart mentioned Hydra, Sitwell's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt and confusion, and then turned into shock. At the same time, Lockhart hurriedly said, "Absorb the Divine Mind." In an instant, Lockhart's eyes flashed, and his mental power followed his gaze into Sitwell's mind. He began to retrieve the memory he had just produced, and dug deeper along the keyword clues of Hydra. At this moment, Sitwell suddenly felt as if a stick had entered his mind, constantly messing with his brain. In the next class, a lot of memories emerged in his mind. He seemed to see the report with his superior Coulson, the conversation with his colleagues, and the memories of traveling abroad. As time passed, Sitwell felt more and more painful, as if his mind was hollowed out. Soon, Sitwell gasped and finally got out of the extremely uncomfortable and suffocating feeling just now. And Lockhart, looking at Sitwell in front of him, flashed a trace of surprise in his eyes. Unexpectedly, Hydra actually has such a method. Just now, when exploring the other party's memory, it can be said that no relevant information about Hydra was found, as if the other party was not a Hydra agent at all. But at the same time, he found that there was a large area of blank in Sitwell's memory. There is no doubt that this is a hidden method of Hydra, which is specifically aimed at interrogating or exploring the memory of other people. If he guessed correctly, it should be the hypnosis that Hydra is best at. In the original plot, Hydra is good at using hypnosis to control a large number of enemies. Now, Through hypnosis, all of Sitwell's memories about Hydra are hidden, making him look like a pure SHIELD agent both inside and outside. It seems that in some aspects, technology is not inferior to magic, and even has its own unique features. Thinking about it, Lockhart recalled the information he got from the agent on the plane before, and a sneer appeared on his face. It seems that the other party was well prepared. He was even prepared to be caught by himself, and even came up with a corresponding response plan, based on his own methods. If I didn't know the original plot, I might have been fooled by them. Now it seems that the location of the underground base obtained from the minds of the agents on those planes before may be a trap. But you can escape for a while, but you can't escape forever. Looking at Sitwell, who was still panting in front of him, Lockhart raised the corner of his mouth and stretched out his wand. He lightly touched Sitwell's brow, and in an instant, a golden dragon magic mark quietly appeared on his forehead, and it kept glowing with golden light. As time passed, the golden dragon magic mark began to fade. Sitwell's expression also began to change gradually, from fear and confusion to expressionless, and then to fanaticism. Soon, the golden dragon magic mark disappeared, and Sitwell stood up. Looking at Lockhart with fanatic eyes, he said respectfully, "Master, Sitwell is willing to do anything for you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 230, Hydra's Black Technology, Boiling the Frog in Warm Water. The Golden Dragon Magical Mark. This is the magic that Lockhart has been constantly researching and iterating. It originated from Voldemort's Death Eater mark, and was exchanged with Slytherin to obtain the most basic magic structure, and then it was continuously improved. What Lockhart is most proud of is that he has integrated the memory, mind, cognition, and soul magic that he understands and masters into it. Lockhart's original body has a deep research in memory magic, otherwise he would not be able to deceive the entire British wizard world. On this basis, Lockhart integrates the psychological and cognitive knowledge of his previous life, and adds the mind, soul, and contract magic of Kamar-Taj. It can be said that this golden dragon magical mark is the essence of his magic research. The most basic function is communication, mental protection, etc. A little more advanced, like Sitwell now, Lockhart reshapes the other party's cognition through the golden dragon magical mark, making him completely loyal to himself. However, this method will have a great impact on the other party's mind, soul, etc., and it can be said that it completely imprisons the other party's potential. So Lockhart will not cast it easily. The most advanced effect of the golden dragon magical imprint is also Lockhart's favorite effect. That is, it can subtly influence the target's subconsciousness and cognition, making the other party trust Lockhart more. This effect is permanent, and even if the magic imprint disappears, there will be no change. Looking at Sitwell in front of him, Lockhart nodded gently and ordered, "Sitwell, your mission is, first, use your position to send me important information about SHIELD. Second, continue to wait for the Hydra people to find you and help you unlock your memory. Then tell me everything you know about Hydra." "Okay, Master," Sitwell replied with a fanatical face. Lockhart thought about it, stretched out his wand, and gently touched Sitwell's forehead again, and a rune pattern flashed. Lockhart continued to instruct, "The magic just now can block all memories related to the mission for a certain period of time. You can use it when you need it. Make sure not to reveal any flaws." He did not forget the ruthlessness of Hydra's methods. In the original plot, in order to prevent accidents, a large number of Hydra agents would be repeatedly brainwashed and screened to ensure loyalty. Lockhart was sure that, if he did not use his backup plan, the other party would definitely screen Sitwell after capturing him, and there might be some traces. By then, it would really be a mess. Sitwell had already used brainwashing, or hypnosis, to resist his absorption of divine thoughts. Alexander Pierce, the head of Hydra, would have more methods. He did not forget that Hydra, as a well-known villain organization in the Marvel world, possessed a lot of extraordinary powers, but it was definitely not a small amount. As for black technology, there was even more. Maybe the Alexander Pierce he found now was a substitute, which would alert the other party, which would be bad. Therefore, we must not be impatient to deal with Hydra. We must eat away at it step by step, just like boiling a frog in warm water. He just doesn't believe that a mere Hydra can fly into the sky. However, the underground base that was trapped should also be dealt with, and by the way, we should show our strength and shock people. Otherwise, people will treat us as soft persimmons. In the afternoon, in a wilderness area outside New York City. At this moment, on the plain ground in the wilderness, 5 black cars stopped side by side, and some SHIELD agents got out of them. The leader was Phil Coulson. A large number of SHIELD agents were holding instruments in their hands, and placed them in various positions around them, constantly emitting red, blue, green, etc., as if recording and detecting something. Not long after, a SHIELD agent walked up to Phil Coulson and said respectfully, "Sir, we have detected a large number of cavities and signs of activity in the nearby underground. It should be an underground base. Do we need to take action now?" Hearing this, Coulson shook his head and said, "No, just keep a record. You don't need to take action today." The agent nodded silently, without saying anything more, and retreated to continue fiddling with the machine. At this moment, Coulson looked down at the watch in his hand and waited quietly. He just found Professor Lockhart this morning. According to the director's instructions, he wanted to see if the two sides could cooperate to explore the root cause of this incident. The result was as he expected. The wizard professor had some information and was preparing to take action. It happened that they came and could watch from the side to prevent anyone from escaping. When Coulson heard this, he immediately understood what Lockhart meant. They still needed to prevent people from escaping. This was probably to show strength to SHIELD and other forces to prevent another missile siege. Coulson understood this and nodded silently to discuss when to take action. So there was the current action. Soon, a portal with sparks quietly appeared in front of Coulson, and Lockhart walked out of it. "Professor Lockhart, we have determined the location of the enemy's base. It's here. We are at this location." Coulson held a nearby map in his hand, trotted to Lockhart, pointed to the red and blue dots on the map and said. Lockhart glanced at the map and nodded slightly to show his understanding. Then, looking at Coulson who wanted to continue talking, Lockhart interrupted and said, "Coulson, thank you for your trouble. Leave the rest to me. Wait, I will hand over the captured people to you." Then, he stretched out his wand directly, drew a few light golden silk threads, and a rune pattern appeared, and then quietly spread around. Magic, detect terrain. At the same time, Lockhart closed his eyes slightly to feel the feedback brought by the magic. Soon, Lockhart looked up and looked to the right. There was a huge space underground. If he guessed correctly, it was the underground base used by Hydra to set traps. Seeing this, Lockhart tapped the ground with his toes, and with a surge of magic power, he jumped lightly and instantly floated in the air. Coulson below saw this scene. His mouth opened slightly, revealing his surprise, and his eyes were full of envy. As expected of a wizard, he could actually fly independently, while they still needed tools. Then, under Coulson's gaze, Lockhart flew to the right and stopped on the flat ground 1 kilometer away. At the same time, Coulson picked up the walkie-talkie and ordered seriously, "The action begins. Prepare to record." After that, Coulson picked up the telescope and observed the next battle through the telescope. He was not stupid. This time, the opponent's behavior obviously angered Lockhart, and Lockhart also wanted to take this opportunity to teach him a lesson or to deter other forces. The movement might be quite loud. This time, they just need to finish the recording work. At this moment, Lockhart was flying in the air, looking at the flat ground below, with a cold smile on his face. If the tiger doesn't show its power, you think I'm Hello Kitty. However, the next moment, P.S. There were some very complicated things going on at home yesterday, and I was very busy. I'm very sorry. I will update as normal today, with 4 chapters. Chapter 231 Dark Magic Fiery Fire. Hydra Underground Base. In a conference room deep in the base, a middle-aged man looked at the screen in front of him with fanatic eyes. To be more precise, he was looking at Alexander Pierce who appeared on the screen. Chief, it has been detected that the wizard professor has entered the base and can start the attack at any time. Okay, Ronnie, this mission is handed over to you. Remember, try to find out the wizard professor's methods as much as possible. The more information we have, the better it is for us. Order will surely come to the whole world. Hearing what the leader Pierce said, Ronnie, the person in charge of the Hydra underground base, looked serious. With a snap, he saluted Pierce and shouted loudly, "Long live Hydra! Long live Hydra!" Pierce replied in a deep voice after hearing it. Then, Pierce reminded Ronnie, "Don't forget to check everyone's status at the end to ensure that no information will be leaked." "Okay, Chief, everything has been arranged. No information related to Hydra will be leaked," Ronnie said solemnly. "Okay, Ronnie, take action. May order be with you." After saying that, Pierce nodded to Ronnie, the screen went black, and the call ended. After seeing this, Ronnie took out a transparent bottle from his pocket and put a few white pills in the bottle. Then, he poured out a pill and put it in his palm, with fanaticism in his eyes. He knew that he would die this time. But he was willing. Everything for order. Everything for the new world. Long live Hydra. Snap. He raised his hand. The pill entered his mouth and swallowed it. At the same time, Ronnie silently said in his mouth, "Darkness, dawn, order, furnace," as if he was using some key words to remind or hint himself. When the words were finished, Ronnie's face began to change. The original serious and solemn face began to change to a blank face, as if he had lost consciousness, and finally became fanatical and determined. At some point, the screen in front of him lit up, and a picture appeared in front of him. The picture was Gilderoy Lockhart. Lockhart, who had just flown to the sky to observe the underground base, suddenly felt a slight noise below. Then, a large number of bullets were fired from the hidden machine guns on the ground. Almost instantly, a light golden protective shield automatically appeared in front of Lockhart, blocking all the bullets. Seeing this, Lockhart was not annoyed. If the other party did not take action, there would be problems. He stretched out his wand and drew an arc gracefully. The next moment, a blue flame suddenly emerged from the tip of the wand, surrounding Lockhart and forming a ring of blue flames. Then the flames on the ring fell into the grass on the flat ground like raindrops. Then, with a bang, the blue flame suddenly exploded and expanded rapidly. Black magic fiery flame. Almost within a few seconds, the blue fiery flame was ignited in a radius of hundreds of meters, forming a sea of fire. What was strange was that there was almost no heat wave passing, as if the blue flames were illusory. But at the same time, when the fiery flame spread over the machine guns on the ground, it instantly turned into molten iron, as if it was burned by a high-intensity flame. Looking at the scene in front of him, Lockhart nodded slightly and slowly descended. The blue sea of fire formed by the fiery flame on the ground seemed to have intelligence and took the initiative to leave a circular open space for Lockhart. Coulson, who saw this scene through a telescope from a distance, subconsciously bit his lips and looked solemn. He saw that in less than a second, the blue flame passed by and burned hundreds of meters into a white area, and even crystal clear glass could be vaguely seen. It seemed that it was formed by the sand on the ground melting at high temperature. At this moment, Lockhart walked step by step according to the sense of life underground. His steps were slow, even revealing a hint of leisure, as if he wanted to see how his prey was struggling to death. At the same time, some black spots appeared in the sky in the distance and quickly returned to Lockhart, just like the previous missiles. With his thoughts turning, the fiery flame that spread hundreds of meters expanded instantly. The next moment, several magical bird creatures composed of fiery flames suddenly emerged from the fiery flames. Thunderbirds. Cry. A cry resounding through the sky emerged, and the Thunderbirds composed of fiery flames flew towards the missiles in the distance at a speed that seemed to be slower than the missiles. Lockhart, as if he didn't care about anything, continued to move forward step by step. With every step, the sea of fire would open a path for him, as if welcoming his master. Coulson, after seeing the missiles in the distance, his face changed, and he quickly shouted, "Dodge, be careful. Missiles are coming." Coulson was very clear about the attack range of the missiles. Even if the opponent's target was Lockhart, their current location would be greatly affected, and even if they were not careful, they would be in danger of death. However, in the blink of an eye, he saw several huge blue birds soaring into the sky and flying towards the missiles. At the same time, a bird cry resounding through the sky came to his ears. Suddenly, a sense of expectation rose in his eyes. It would be best if he could not be attacked by missiles. He raised the telescope in his hand and watched the Thunderbird flap its wings and keep speeding away. Soon he saw the missile and the Thunderbird meet. Cry. The Thunderbird let out a long cry and opened its mouth slightly, as if it was going to swallow it into its stomach. In fact, the two collided with each other, and the fiery flame on the Thunderbird's body directly spread to the missile. Almost instantly, the missile turned into molten iron and evaporated quickly, disappearing into thin air. What Cole Coulson saw was the Thunderbird opening its mouth to swallow the missile, and then the missile disappeared, and the Thunderbird began to fly towards the sea of fire, as if returning home. Lockhart sensed this scene, and raised the corner of his mouth. Fiery flame, as the top black magic in the world of Harry Potter, naturally has its own unique features. Never extinguishing and high temperature are its most basic functions. The most powerful thing is that fiery flame will become more and more intelligent as the fire spreads. Like the Thunderbird at this moment, with Lockhart's command. Without Lockhart's control, the opponent attacked the missile. The sea of fire formed by fiery flame is simple and easy to communicate with, and even without too much control, the fire will take the initiative to open a channel for him. Even Fiendfire will melt the people or things he needs according to his needs, and at the same time, he can also make specific people or things remain intact. Just like the magical creatures Grindelwald used to identify enemies and friends. Enemies will melt instantly when passing through Fiendfire, while friends and people with the same ideals will remain unharmed. Of course, the corresponding side effect of Fiendfire is that after Fiendfire has intelligence, if its strength is not enough, it will actively resist or counterattack its master. It's like a creature that wants to be free and is unwilling to die. After all, except for the master who can cancel Fiendfire at will, it is extremely difficult for others to suppress or even destroy Fiendfire. Of course, for Lockhart, he is willing to use it, so it is naturally not a problem. Soon, Lockhart walked to an open space and stopped. In his perception, there was a lot of life breath and fearful emotions underground. The third update, to be updated later. Chapter 232, Nick Fury, who has a sense of crisis engraved in his bones. At this moment, Ronnie, the director of the Hydra base, looked expressionlessly at the screen in front of him that was observed by the satellite. All the monitoring equipment outside the base was damaged, and now the enemy can only be observed through satellites. Seeing the missile destroyed and all the weapons outside the base turned into destruction, Ronnie's heart was very calm, as if frozen, as if he had never felt fear, and only one thought emerged in his mind. Kill him, kill him. Kill the wizard professor opposite by any means. No 58, release the fearless gas, wait for the wizard professor to enter, and be ready to self-destruct the base at any time. Ding, received, releasing the fearless gas, the system self-destructs. Number 58, the simple artificial intelligence of the base system, replied in a mechanical cold voice. At this moment, Lockhart was interested in feeling the fearful breath emitted by the life below. He didn't think about it, and went directly into the base below. He knew that there was a high possibility of a trap inside, but he was not so stupid. The thought turned, and in an instant, with Lockhart as the center, the surrounding fierce fire expanded rapidly, and the temperature continued to rise, melting all the sand on the ground into glass, and then turning into liquid and gas. The nearby flat ground of hundreds of meters was burned, and the entire terrain nearby sank at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was like a meteorite impact. The only difference was that the surface was very smooth, like glass. Soon, as the fiendish fire continued to melt the surrounding soil and sand, the soil and rocks disappeared, and the steel on the surface of the underground base gradually appeared. But in an instant, it turned into molten iron, revealing a large number of Hydra agents below. At this moment, Lockhart was floating in the air, looking down at these agents, and felt that their emotions changed from fear to fanaticism. He had a further understanding of Hydra's methods. With his thoughts turning, the fiendish fire quickly entered the base, and almost instantly, it directly enveloped the Hydra agents below, and they did not feel any pain. Because the fiendish fire swept over, they had not had time to react, and they had already turned into gas, without even a bone left. Floating in the air, Lockhart closed his eyes slightly, stretched out his hands, and controlled the fiendish fire to continue to extend deeper into the base. Every breath of life encountered was completely eliminated and vaporized. At the same time, he also asked Lihuo to prohibit burning some of the surrounding machine data, which might be useful later. Suddenly, Lockhart's heart was pounding, and his intuition was warning him frantically. With his mind turning, Lockhart waved his wand directly, and magic power quickly poured into the wand. A pure white ray quickly shot from the tip of the wand to the ground, and a pure white frozen land appeared, and then spread wildly, as if it was copied. Magic freezing the world. Click, click, click. Almost instantly, the nearby ground and Lihuo disappeared, replaced by a thick layer of ice and cold air. Moreover, the cold air continued to spread into the cave below, and at a speed visible to the naked eye, it enveloped all the surrounding walls, machinery and other objects. In less than 10 seconds, under the infusion of Lockhart's large amount of magic power, the entire underground base was frozen. A large number of people and objects were all turned into ice. And Lockhart, feeling that the intuitive warning was over, felt a little relieved. Just now, he directly warned, and he immediately thought of the base self-destruction. After all, such things are not uncommon. Even in every movie, there will be such scenes more or less. So, he immediately froze everything directly, and at the same time, through the guidance of magic, all the machines and technologies below were ineffective. If it was really a self-destruction, he had no choice but to escape. And once he escaped, the effect of this demonstration would obviously decrease. His action this time was mainly to give others some warnings. He didn't just run away. He never shied away from a frontal battle. He would act decisively when he should, and would never delay. While thinking, Lockhart looked at the frozen ground below, and the remaining fierce fire, and his mouth curled up. Then, looking at Coulson in the distance, Lockhart waved his wand, and a pale white information light ball quickly flew towards Coulson. The information contained in the light ball was some information Lockhart had just obtained from this group of Hydra agents. Since Hydra East had prepared means in advance to mislead him, he would let it go. Anyway, the future Hydra, isn't it his own? While thinking, Lockhart casually swung his wand, opened a portal, and went directly back to his home. The matter should be resolved, and it is time to do their own things. The group of people in Kamar-Taj have been making a lot of small moves recently. Sir, a lot of heat is detected, and the underground base is about to self-destruct. Coulson heard the shouts of the special agent under his command. His face tightened, and he subconsciously looked at Professor Lockhart not far away. The self-destruction of the base may not have much impact on them, but for Lockhart in the middle, that is naturally another story. However, the next moment, the agent in his ear shouted loudly again, "Sir, the self-destruction has stopped, and a lot of cold air has appeared above the base." Well, without the agent's reminder, Coulson has already felt the cold air coming, and subconsciously tightened his body. But his eyes were very stunned. It is autumn now, how could there be such a strong cold air? It is clear without thinking that it is definitely the method used by the wizard professor just now to prevent the base from self-destructing. Then, if the enemy in the future is the wizard professor in front of him, the missile will have no effect, and even the bomb explosion will be useless. This made him feel very difficult, although the other party and S.H.I.E.L.D. are now in a friendly trading relationship. But he didn't forget that his director had always regarded the other party as an imaginary enemy, constantly coming up with various strategies to restrict the other party's means. He felt a little helpless. There was no way. As an agent organization, if there was nothing to do, they had to make various plans. Even if it was a nuclear bomb explosion, an alien invasion, or even the zombie crisis in the movie, robot war, etc., the director asked them to make corresponding plans. It can be said that his own director Nick Fury has a sense of crisis engraved in his bones. It seems that there is no plan to deal with various crises, which cannot give him a sense of security. Then, after a while, Coulson suddenly found a ball of light flying towards him. Before he could react, the ball of light sank into his forehead. Then, a lot of information emerged in his mind. After reading it through, Coulson showed a bitter arc at the corner of his mouth. What kind of organization is Black Snake? Why has he never heard of it? And how is it related to the military? After thinking for a moment, Coulson nodded helplessly and prepared to go back and report to the director. Then, he called his agents to continue collecting data. This was the first time that the wizard professor had attacked in front of him and left so many traces. If he didn't collect some of them, the director would definitely scold him. However, as the data continued to be collected, seeing the analysis of the blue flame and the cold air, Coulson's face became more and more serious. Chapter 233 Captain America teaches a wizard apprentice. Magic luggage space, spell training room. In the spacious training room, Captain America Steve, carrying his shield, taught Ian, Remy, and Vera. Ian, tell me, what do you think is the most important thing in a battle? Ian thought for a moment and then expressed his understanding. Instructor Steve, I think it is sufficient magic power and faster casting speed, which is the most critical. To this, Steve did not confirm or deny and continued to ask Remy next to him. Remy, tell me your understanding. Instructor, I feel that for a wizard, knowing advanced magic spells is the most important thing. Mastering a powerful or strange spell can completely kill enemies across levels. Remy answered confidently. Well, he likes powerful spells, especially those who master a large number of advanced spells like his mentor. Vera, what about you? Steve asked the girl Vera next to him. Instructor. Vera hesitated, but continued. I personally feel that what Remy and Ian said are right, but I feel that for a battle, rich combat experience is the most important. If we can seize the opportunity, use rich combat experience, and defeat the enemy at the lowest cost, this is a successful battle. After listening to the answers of the three students opposite, Steve clapped his hands lightly, as if he was very satisfied with their answers. Then, he said to the three people, Ian, Vera, Remy, come, let's have a battle. After the battle, I will talk to you about my answer. Hearing Steve's request, the three people were eager to try. This was the first time they had fought with the instructors invited by their mentors. They were quite interested, especially after they heard about Captain America's fame in history. They were even more interested. However, Ian thought about it and asked, Instructor, do you want to fight with the three of us? Or do you want each of us to fight a battle? Of course I will fight with the three of you. Don't worry, use all the abilities you have mastered, and don't worry about any accidents. Steve smiled calmly. This was the first time he had done this for his students, and he felt pretty good about it. Afterwards, the four of them took a few steps back and kept a distance. Ian and the other two looked at Instructor Steve, who was carrying a shield on his back, and looked at him seriously. According to duel etiquette, he raised his wand and bowed slightly. Steve was not surprised to see this. Lockhart had mentioned wizards in his message before, and he felt that it was etiquette to follow the customs of wizards and bowed slightly. Then, he shouted loudly, 3, 2, 1, feint, expelliarmus, shield flying. As soon as the words fell, Ian, Remy, and Vera cast spells quickly according to their previous training. In an instant, 3 red lights shot towards Steve from their wands. When Steve saw this, he did not dodge, but ran directly in the direction of the spell, and was about to touch it. In an instant, he jumped high and directly jumped over the 3 spells. After crossing the spell, he rushed towards the 3 people. In just 1 or 2 seconds, Steve ran in front of the 3 people. Ian and the other 2 who had just reacted immediately raised their wands, and prepared to release the spell again. Result bang. Steve raised his left hand directly, clamped it in front of his chest, and knocked Ian and Remy to the ground with his left shoulder. Because Vera next to him was a girl, Steve did not directly use his hands. However, while hitting Ian and Remy, he reached out and grabbed Vera's wrist, squeezed it hard, and then shook it. Ah! Vera screamed because of the severe pain. At the same time, he couldn't control himself, opened his right hand, and the wand fell. Steve took the fallen wand with his quick reaction. The next moment, looking at the 2 people who fell to the ground, it seemed that they were about to get up and raise their wands. Steve quickly ran to them, turned his palm into a knife, and chopped at the wrists of the two. In an instant, the wands that the two had just raised fell to the ground. Steve took the two wands in his hand, then stepped back a few steps, looked at the three people, and raised the three wands in his hand at the same time, and gently shook them in front of the three people. Ian and Remy stood up and gently rubbed their wrists, still feeling a little pain. Although Vera was standing next to him, he was also the same. Steve's strength was not good just now, and he also felt a little pain in his wrist. Then, the three stood together, and looked at the instructor Steve in front of them with resentment. It seemed that he was complaining about the other party, whether he was too strong, and made them feel a little pain. After seeing this, Steve smiled and said with some comfort, "Does it hurt?" The three nodded in unison. Steve continued, "It seems that you will have to do some special pain training in the future, because some pain will lose your combat ability and your weapons. This is a bit embarrassing. Look at which soldiers and agents outside will lose their guns or weapons because of the pain in their wrists." Hearing this, the three hung their heads. They didn't expect that just a nod would add some pain training to themselves. You can tell it hurts just by listening to it. Cough. Looking at the expressions of the three people, Steve coughed lightly and said seriously, "Your weaknesses are obvious. I believe you know it too. Your close combat ability is weak. Once you get close to the enemy, your reaction ability will be greatly reduced, and you can't even cast a spell. Even after losing your wand, you have no combat ability. This is your biggest weakness. Even some ordinary people, if they know it, can design to steal the wand in your hand, so that you can't cast spells." Hearing this, the expressions of the three people became serious, and nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Steve continued, "And in order to make up for this shortcoming, Professor Lockhart asked me to train you specifically, so that you can't lose your sense of proportion, because the enemy is getting close to you. I don't ask you to beat the enemy in close combat, but let you at least have a certain resistance, so that you can get a distance and cast magic." Hearing what Steve said, the three people nodded heavily, to show that they understood. Seeing that the three of them listened to what he said, Steve slowly said, "The question I asked you just now is, what is the most important thing in a battle? In fact, there are many answers, and each person has a different answer, but they all have one thing in common, that is, defeating the enemy. No matter what kind of battle, we are all aiming to defeat the enemy. It's just that the spells, magic power, casting speed, combat experience, etc. you just mentioned are all means." At this point, Steve paused, as if to give them time to understand. After a moment, he said in a deep voice, "And what I want to do is to help you find a fighting method that suits you." At this moment, suddenly, clap, 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 Steve heard a sound of applause from his ear. He turned his head and saw that it was Professor Lockhart. Then, Steve heard Lockhart praise, "Ian, Remy, Vera, listen carefully. This is the experience of a hero who has experienced a lot of battles. I agree with what Instructor Steve said. Everyone has a fighting method that suits him or her. You should train well and find your own fighting method with the help of Instructor Steve." Chapter 234, The King of Book Clubs. "Okay, mentor." Ian, Remy, and Vera nodded in unison. Steve, who was standing next to him, smiled after hearing Lockhart's praise. Then, Steve promised, "Lockhart, don't worry, Ian, Remy, and Vera are all good seedlings. With their efforts, their close combat level will definitely improve quickly." Hearing this, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction, then stretched out his wand and lightly tapped it in the air. A light yellow information ball appeared at the tip of the wand. At the same time, Lockhart introduced, "Captain, this is some specific information about the hand and the society that I collected. The actual combat training later will be handed over to you. You can choose the corresponding mission target based on their conditions." Well, these were naturally obtained from Shield Sitwell. Since he had already planted a nail in Shield, wouldn't it be a pity if he didn't play a role? It just so happened that Sitwell was the head of the intelligence department. It would be a bit stupid not to take advantage of this opportunity to collect more intelligence. With his mind turning, Lockhart gently stroked his wand, and the light yellow ball of light flew towards Steve. Seeing this, Steve said solemnly, "Okay, Lockhart. He had no objection to letting students undergo actual combat training. In his era, after training in the army for a few years, they would go to the battlefield. So, more sweat in peacetime, less blood in war. Especially, Steve would not be soft-hearted when facing evil organizations like the Hand. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded slightly. Then, he said to Steve, "Captain, I have something to discuss with Vera. It won't take long. Sorry to bother you." He had two main purposes this time. The first purpose was to see how Steve taught Ian and the others. Lockhart basically saw the whole process just now. It must be said that a top teacher has one common characteristic, knowing how to teach students in accordance with their aptitude. And Steve not only has experience in this regard, but also pays great attention to teaching students in accordance with their aptitude, to find, dig, and form a fighting method suitable for them. Hearing this today, Lockhart was very relieved. The second purpose, of course, was to discuss the matter of the Universal Book Cafe with Vera. Lockhart originally arranged for Vera, Ian, and Remy to take turns to look after the Universal Book Cafe. But he found that Ian was okay, but Remy was a bit erratic. When he was in charge, he was always a bit impatient, and sometimes something happened. Vera, perhaps because of her female advantage, was more gentle, or more patient. Moreover, she came to look after the Universal Book Cafe, and basically handled it in an orderly manner. So far, there has been no problem, and she has not fallen behind in her usual practice. More importantly, Lockhart found that Vera's ability to make friends is not weak, and she dare not say that she is a social maniac. But most of the mages in Kamar-Taj are willing to be friends with Vera. Once Cassilis came, he even praised Vera in person. It can even be said that compared to Lockhart, Vera is more popular in Kamar-Taj. Well, although the male wizard admires Vera's exquisite appearance, and the female wizard also has a good impression of Vera's gentle and firm character, but it is correct to say that Vera is the king of connections in the Universal Book Cafe. Seeing this situation, Lockhart simply let Vera Yeo continue to be in charge of the Universal Book Cafe, to give full play to her advantages. Of course, he was also worried about affecting her magic practice, so he usually increased the supply of resources. Overall, Vera's magic practice speed has not decreased but increased, and she is even like a fish in water in managing the Universal Book Cafe. Even Miss Carter praised Vera for her talent in management, and asked Lockhart to train Vera more in this regard. Therefore, Lockhart usually discusses matters about the Universal Book Cafe with Vera. After hearing Lockhart's request, Steve frowned and nodded slightly to Vera, and didn't say much. He has always been a self-disciplined and strict person. Although he was slightly unhappy about being out of training in the middle, he wouldn't say much. What's more, this is Lockhart looking for his own students. After seeing this, Vera politely said hello to her instructor Steve, and walked to her mentor. Seeing this, Lockhart stretched out his wand, and drew a circle in the air. A portal opened, and took Vera into his study. It was now night, and the silvery moonlight shone through the glass into Lockhart's desk, illuminating the books, notebooks, and cups on the desk. At the same time, the sound of cicadas rang out, making the night even quieter. Suddenly, a portal with sparks opened. At the same time, the entire study seemed to sense the return of its owner, and bright lights quietly appeared, illuminating the entire study. The next moment, Lockhart took Vera into the study. "Vera, sit down." Lockhart stood in front of the desk, pointed to the seat opposite, and waved his hand to Vera. "Okay, instructor." Vera nodded gently, and sat opposite Lockhart. "Vera, I want some coffee, tea, or honey." "Teacher, tea will do." After hearing this, Lockhart stretched out his wand and gently pointed at the cup opposite. The tea surged up, and stopped when it reached 3/4 of the cup. At the same time, the same tea appeared in front of Lockhart. Vera was not surprised by this. She held the cup with both hands, and took a sip of the tea. Lockhart did not get straight to the point. Instead, he asked with concern, "How are the classes of Instructor Steve and Ms. Carter recently?" Instructor Steve is very experienced, and very patient with us. Vera thought for a moment and replied seriously, "Although Ms. Carter is a little strict, she also takes good care of me. She told me a lot of management experience, which is very helpful to me." Hearing this, Lockhart nodded slightly. Of course, he would not ignore the teachers he invited. Occasionally, he would drink tea privately and exchange ideas about the performance of the students. In general, the three have different personalities. Although Remy is a little impatient, he corrects his mistakes when he knows them. Ian is very calm and does things very carefully and rigorously. Vera seems to have a gentle personality, but she is very determined. She can always stick to what she wants to do. It can be said that all three of them are very outstanding. Afterwards, the two chatted for a while, and Lockhart returned to the topic. Vera, you have always been in charge of the Vincian Book Cafe. Let's talk about the recent situation. As his student, he naturally would not hide the possible problems he might face. Instead, he would be frank and speak directly to facilitate the management and communication later. Regarding the question of his mentor, Vera paused, as if thinking about something, and after a moment, he slowly said, "Teacher, as you said, the hostile wizards on Kamar-Taj should have taken action. In recent times, the number of wizards coming to the Vincian Book Cafe has decreased significantly. P.S. Sorry, the timer is set wrong. Chapter 235 The person Nick Fury respects. Teacher, the flow of mages in Kamar-Taj has decreased significantly recently. To be more precise, the number of mages coming to trade has decreased. According to my observation, the mages who used to come to us to buy potions have hardly appeared recently. We have reason to suspect that they have made agreements with some mages not to come to the Universal Book Cafe by relying on their advantages in potions and alchemy." Hearing this, Lockhart nodded slightly and continued to ask, "Anything else you found?" Vera paused, as if organizing his words, and said solemnly, "Teacher, I talked to some mages in Kamar-Taj and found something that I don't know whether it is true or not. If it is true, it will be very tricky. When a friend was communicating with me, he mentioned to me that a tea house appeared in Kamar-Taj, and every aspect completely imitated the Universal Book Cafe." At this point, Vera hesitated, glanced at Lockhart, and then slowly said, "Including the magic card you made, teacher. I heard that the other party also imitated it. The effect is exactly the same, but the name has changed. The magic card has become a mage card, and the magic points have become mage points." After hearing this, Lockhart showed no expression, but nodded to show that he understood. In fact, he had already asked Cassilis and Morin to find out the other party's news. After all, he had only joined for less than 2 months, and Cassilis and Morin had lived in Kamar-Taj for many years, which was deeply rooted. According to the feedback, Lockhart was sure that the other party might have planned for the Vincian Book Cafe. After he refused, a tea house was opened in a very short time. The most important thing was that, except for the different name, everything was an imitation of himself. Lockhart believed that, if it weren't for the fact that Kamar-Taj had a library, the other party might have chosen to open a book cafe. If this was the case, the other party's behavior was not imitation at all, but could be directly called a replica. "Vera, is there anything else you want to say?" Lockhart continued to ask. This time, Vera shook her head, and Lockhart asked encouragingly, "Vera, do you have any good solutions for what you said above, teacher?" Vera hesitated, but seeing Lockhart's encouraging eyes, he expressed his thoughts. "I personally don't have a good solution. Although the other party imitates us, their advantage is that they are in Kamar-Taj, and Kamar-Taj itself is a gathering place for mages, so there is a natural flow of traffic. And we are in New York. Because of your relationship with Master Cassilis, the mages of the New York temple tend to come to us, and there are very few others. But, I talked to Teacher Carter before, and Teacher Carter gave me a suggestion that sounds very good to me. That is to reposition the Universal Book Cafe, raise the threshold for reception, and specifically receive elite mages with good strength or special abilities. Let the tea house in Kamar-Taj become a gathering place for ordinary mages, and we will become a trading place for high-end mages. By then, if the other party wants to compete with our Universal Book Cafe, there will be nothing they can do." At this point, Vera's tone was somewhat excited. According to what Teacher Carter said, the advantage of doing this is that we can completely influence the perception of the mages. In their perception, the other party is connected to an ordinary mage, without style, or relatively low, and we receive the elites, which immediately distinguishes the two. those elite mages will consciously avoid going to the other side and choose our Wangxiang Book Cafe. The most important thing is that the elite mages are more powerful, richer, and have more good things, which can further increase the income of Wangxiang Book Cafe. Pa. 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 After listening to what Vera said, Lockhart clapped his hands lightly, his eyes full of praise. Carter is worthy of being the founder of SHIELD, and has rich experience in struggle. This plan is very good, and can completely help Wangxiang Book Cafe get rid of its current predicament. It can be said that it is almost the same as what he thought. If he competes directly with the other tea house face to face, even if he can win, it will only be a miserable victory at a great cost. Therefore, he did not think of confronting the other party head on, but changed the track and knocked the other party down to the low end, becoming an ordinary, low representative. Wouldn't it be nice to make money from rich wizards? But Lockhart heard Vera's worried tone, instantly understood the other party's worries, and comforted. Don't worry, Vera, don't worry about resources. I, your teacher, dare not say much about other things, but in terms of gold galleons and magic resources, ordinary pureblood families can't compare with me. Well, he directly emptied the inheritance vault of the Lestrange pureblood family, and took a lot of Voldemort's precious magic items. Not to mention, he had resold a lot of potions and magic items in the Marvel world before, and made a lot of money. To brag, he is rich, nothing wrong. Hearing this, Vera nodded silently and slightly put down his worries. Then, she heard her mentor smiling and asking as if testing her, Vera, it's a very good idea to go high-end, but Carter should have mentioned it to you. To go high-end, the most important thing is to raise the threshold and refuse unsuitable mages from coming in. It's difficult to go high-end if you don't know how to refuse. The second is to increase the price. The most obvious difference between high-end and low-end is the price. This is also a criterion for many people to judge. And now, we already have quite a few members, most of them are ordinary mages. Tell me, when we raise the threshold and increase the fee, how to solve the problems of these ordinary mages. At this point, Lockhart smiled indifferently, and continued to ask, one more thing, have you ever thought about if we go high-end, how to make it impossible for the other party to imitate? Hearing a series of questions from her mentor, Vera was excited. It seemed that these paths were not wrong, and the mentor was very supportive. So, he sorted out his thoughts a little, and said slowly but clearly, Teacher, I think the first thing we need to do is to reshape the book cafe environment. In order to make the other party unable to imitate, or dare not imitate, we can. Hearing Vera talking and getting more and more excited, Lockhart nodded slightly, looking at Vera with admiration. Carter was right. Vera was really talented in management, and should be trained well. In the future, maybe Vera will become his right-hand man. His concept of a top wizard academy requires a lot of talents. At night, the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Trident building. Nick Fury, sitting in his office, looked at the heroic old boss in front of him with a dazed look in his eyes. It seemed as if he had returned to more than 20 years ago, when Director Peggy Carter was in power, and together with Chief Howard, led S.H.I.E.L.D., Pierce, and himself, and the FBI, CIA, and the military and other forces, step by step, confronted, won, and gradually grew to become the world's top spy organization. Soon, Nick Fury came back to his senses, and with a hint of excitement in his tone, or perhaps a hint of respect that he was not aware of, he said, Director Carter, congratulations on your return to youth. I wonder how things are going with the wizard professor. The third update will be updated later. Chapter 236, Peggy Carter joins SHIELD. Fury, after so many years, I didn't expect you to be the same as before, never being polite, and getting straight to the point. Carter looked at the black director Nick Fury in front of him and sighed. Hearing the sigh of his old boss, Nick Fury did not have a cold face like before to his subordinates. Instead, he squeezed a smile on his stiff face and responded, Ms. Carter, you also know that I have always been clean and neat in doing things. I have not changed this point after becoming the director. Although the tone was gentle, Nick Fury silently changed the address from director to Ms. during the conversation, as if hinting at something. Hearing this, Carter smiled and replied, it's good that you haven't changed. I liked this about you before. I gave you many tasks to do, and you completed them well. You are worthy of being the ace agent of SHIELD. I remember that your completion record is higher than Pierce, almost close to 100%. Hearing Carter's praise, Nick Fury smiled silently and did not reply. When Carter was the director, he was indeed trusted by Carter and he took care of him in many ways. He couldn't deny this. If he didn't admit it, his reputation would be really bad in all institutions in the United States. Seeing Nick Fury's silence, Carter seemed to recall something and said suddenly, by the way, Fury, I also want to thank you for taking Steve to find Professor Lockhart. Otherwise, I might still be an old man who was not in his right mind. Well, letting her boyfriend ask a wizard of unknown strength for her, although the result is good, the person who gave the idea definitely has bad intentions. What's more, taking advantage of his slightly unclear mind, he dared to fool him. He is worthy of being the successor that he and Pierce are optimistic about. As if he didn't hear the meaning of Carter's words, Nick Fury said modestly, as if he was praised, this is mainly thanks to Professor Lockhart and the captain's deep affection for you. Otherwise, how could you return to youth and be so energetic? Carter looked at Nick Fury with a half smile on his face, looking at Nick Fury's dark face as thick as a city wall. Immediately, Carter's demeanor became serious, and she didn't think about continuing to talk about these topics. After all, she has left her original position, and now Nick Fury is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury, I have started to cooperate with Professor Lockhart. The specific information is affected by the magic contract, so I can't say more. Carter said seriously. However, I now need S.H.I.E.L.D. to invite some consulting experts in the business field who make high-end products. I want to discuss with them about how to make a book cafe high-end. Hearing what Carter said, Nick Fury tapped the table lightly with his fingertips, thinking. Hearing the magic contract mentioned by his old boss just now, Fury was a little disappointed in his heart, but he was not too anxious. For agents like them, it is very common to be restricted and unable to reveal information clearly. Most agents will consciously train the corresponding skills, not to mention their experienced superiors. As expected, Nick Fury heard what Carter said later. What does it mean to make the book cafe high-end? It reveals a lot of information. Why do you want to make it high-end? Doesn't it mean that there is a competitor, and they haven't adopted the method of direct combat yet? Either the strength of both sides is equal, or there is a very stable order in the magic world, so that no one dares to act rashly. Thinking about it, Nick Fury nodded lightly and said, okay, Ms. Carter, I will immediately ask someone to find a business consulting expert related to business. The cost will be paid by S.H.I.E.L.D. You can communicate anywhere you want. At this point, Fury tapped the desk lightly with his fingertips, as if hinting at something. In response, Carter shook his head and said it was impossible. This made Nick Fury a little disappointed, but he didn't think much about it. After a moment of silence, as if thinking of something, he asked tentatively, Ms. Carter, since you have regained your youth, are you interested in returning to SHIELD? Hearing the temptation in Nick Fury's words, Carter looked at Fury with a teasing look on his face, and slowly said, I will not return to SHIELD for the time being. After all, it has been a long time and I haven't been involved in many things. Just relax and teach students now. It's a break from the busy schedule. Hearing this, Fury was relieved. Peggy Carter, an active agent since World War II, later founded SHIELD. He could not fully predict the political resources and connections she had. Not to mention, Peggy Carter's remaining influence in SHIELD. Even him and his boss Alexander Pierce were affected by it. Especially Peggy Carter's rejuvenation. The various information contained in it was enough for some old guys to make a decision. It can be said that as long as Carter took over SHIELD, there is a possibility of sidelining him or even driving him away. Although he was confident that he could hold on to his position as director, it would definitely take up a lot of his energy. Now that Carter had clearly stated that he would not interfere in SHIELD's affairs, he naturally breathed a sigh of relief. The next moment, a scene that surprised Nick Fury appeared. He saw Carter take out something that looked like a branch. If he guessed correctly, it should be a magic wand in the hands of a wizard. Sure enough, he heard Carter say, besides, Professor Lockhart said that I have good spiritual talents and can become a wizard. Later, I have to focus on how to practice magic. Shield's affairs still depend on you. You are a person that Pierce and I are optimistic about. I believe you will be able to make the right decision. Magic. Carter actually mastered magic. At this moment, Nick Fury received this key information. His brain was working fast, and his face showed the most gentle smile in his life. He said gently, "In this case, I will try not to disturb you from teaching students and practicing magic. However, after all, you were the founder of SHIELD, and if you encounter some troubles, SHIELD has the obligation to help you solve them. In this way, I can authorize you as a level 7 agent as the director. On the one hand, I will try not to disturb your life, and on the other hand, if you need any information, you can get it directly through SHIELD's intelligence system." Hearing the goodwill in Nick Fury's words, Carter smiled faintly. But at the same time, she sighed in her heart. Since she could practice magic, she naturally made the decision to join Lockhart's side. Later, she would not only be responsible for teaching students, but also for the organization and construction of the wizard world in the future, and even for wizard training. Until now, she had to be responsible for communicating with SHIELD. It was not impossible for Nick Fury to get what he wanted. With her understanding of Lockhart, if she wanted to get it, she would have to pay. Therefore, if SHIELD wants to achieve Fury's goal, it will have to pay a high price in the future. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237 Dragon Bones, Black Sky, Dormammu. At night, in Hell's Kitchen, deep inside a shabby factory. Squeak. Squeak. In the dark factory, the squeaking sound of mice occasionally rang out, and the next moment, the sound disappeared, as if dead. In this way, the factory remained quiet and very quiet. Faintly, a dark factory could be seen, as if there was a shadow swaying, but the next moment, it seemed as if nothing was found, and it was still dark. At this moment, suddenly, step, 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 a light sound of footsteps came from outside the factory. Then, the dark shadows swayed in the dark factory, as if they were alert, or welcoming. Soon, an old Asian woman with an old face looked at the dark factory, as if she could see the shadows inside. The next moment, she gently raised her old bone-like arm, and waved it gently. In an instant, a wave of air swept across the entire factory. At the same time, the entire factory seemed to be activated, and the torches hidden around burned one after another at a speed visible to the naked eye. A large amount of firelight illuminated the entire factory, dispelling the darkness. A large number of ninjas in black were seen kneeling on one knee on the ground, and opposite them was the old woman. She was also the five fingers of the hand in society, Madame Gao. "Get up." Madame Gao's somewhat hoarse voice sounded, and all the black-clad ninjas stood up one after another, and stood on both sides, leaving a wide passage in the middle. Madame Gao looked at the passage in front of her, raised her head, looked at the railing in the sky opposite, and said in a somewhat hoarse voice, "Botu, Murakami, Alexandra, Salander, you come out." Madame Gao's voice fell, and four figures appeared on the railing above, and then they jumped up. They directly crossed the railing, and fell to the flat ground below. "Madame Gao, you are late." Murakami, who was dressed in black, and had a long sword on his waist, said in a cold tone. In response, Madame Gao looked at Botu indifferently and said calmly, "Don't talk nonsense, let's talk business. What's the problem with the sacrifice to the beast?" Feeling Madame Gao's attitude of ignoring him, Murakami was filled with anger, but then, thinking of the other party's power, he suppressed his anger, but remained silent. The gambler on the side seemed to sense the tense atmosphere and came out, as if to ease the tense atmosphere, and said, "Mrs. Gao, recently, our factory has been severely damaged. Both the goods and the deaf-mute people inside have been lost. The most important thing is that someone has already targeted a hand. So far, 3 of our factories have been attacked. Among them, one of yours is under his command. Hearing this, Mrs. Gayo's eyes turned cold, and she asked in a cold voice, I just came back. Tell me, who did it? The people of the Holy Society? The gambler seemed to be able to feel the cold air emanating from Mrs. Gayo's body. He shook his head slightly and said softly, no, the other party's methods are very concealed. Every time, we only know after the matter is over. How is the sacrifice? Mrs. Gayo was silent for a moment and asked again. At this time, Murakami on the side, said in a cold voice, the deaf mute originally scheduled as a sacrifice has been rescued. Now, we can only select a new batch, otherwise the black sky will be out of control, and then. Mrs. Gayo knew the consequences without Murakami's reminder. As the trump card of the hand and society, Hikage is so powerful that, even if the 5 of them join forces, they are no match for him. If it weren't for the power of the beast, it wouldn't be so easy for them to control Hikage. Thinking about it, Mrs. Gayo said to the 4 people in a hoarse voice, the latest batch of stowaways are about to arrive, and they can be used as sacrifices. I want the rest, to make up for my losses. After hearing this, Murakami said dissatisfiedly, I also have a factory destroyed. I want at least half of it. Now is not the time to quarrel. Alexandra saw that the two seemed to be about to quarrel, and immediately walked out and said, let's get rid of the enemy first, otherwise both the sacrifice and the factory will be in trouble. Alexandra's words made the air around them stagnate. Salander on the side said faintly, my factory is also destroyed. Alexandra, don't talk nonsense. Salander, I naturally have my own way. Alexandra glanced at the people around her, waved her hand, and signaled them to retreat. When only 5 of them were left in the factory, Alexandra said in a deep voice, recently, I met a friend who, like us, needs a living sacrifice. However, we are sacrificing the beast, and the other party is sacrificing a being called Dorman. Alexandra, are you crazy? Madame Gayo shouted, you know, it's already very difficult for us to deal with the beast, and you are still dealing with the evil god believers. Aren't you afraid that the other party will swallow you up? In response to Madame Gayo's extremely dissatisfied tone, Alexandra waved her hand slightly and said, don't worry, the other party is just like us, not the evil god believers, but all use the power of the evil god. Hearing this, although Madame Gayo did not continue to talk, the suspicion in her eyes remained unabated, and the same was true for the 3 people next to her, Botu. The 5 of them were all studying in Kunlun, but they chose to betray, in order to seek immortality. But the knowledge they learned in the middle told them the danger of the evil god. They are more familiar with the power of the beast, and have corresponding response plans. As long as there is enough blood and flesh sacrifice, they can completely obtain the power of the other party at a very low cost. Not only can it strengthen itself, it even has the ability to resurrect. However, facing the existence of an unknown evil god, even its believers, or those who use the power of the evil god in the same way as them, are potentially dangerous. Everyone relies on the power of the evil god. Everyone knows that the evil god's believers are basically crazy and use the power of the evil god at every turn. If you deal with them, and are sacrificed by them accidentally, you will have no place to cry. Even if you rely on the power of the evil god like them, you can't take it lightly. All crows in the world are black. Just look at them, and you will know. If you put yourself in their shoes, if you have the opportunity to obtain the other party's way of using the power of the evil god, they will not give up. After all, no one can have too much power. Suddenly, the gambler next to him seemed to think of something, and asked Alexandra directly, you didn't tell him about the dragon bones, did you? What are you thinking about? Alexandra said somewhat dissatisfiedly, I have only known him for a short time, how could he leak the dragon bones? Then, he continued, however, I talked to him before, he has the ability to explore traces. He can help us find the enemy. Thanks to Forever Dusk, Drifting Dead Branches, Belu GX, Don't Understand Fengaya, Ammon Only 12, I Love Tigers, Eclipse in the Wind, Blacklist You, Hyunse, Cut with a Blade, Batman Joker, and Silent Sai for voting for the monthly ticket. Chapter 238 Spider-Man. Magic luggage space, the corridor outside the alchemy room. Goo-goo, are you sure it's here? Peter held the bull escape bird Goo-goo, and asked the door of the room not far away. Goo-goo, Goo-goo. Goo-goo looked again and confirmed it, and called out. There was nothing wrong. It was the alchemy room mentioned by the breeder before, and it had been in it before. Although after entering, the breeder would never let him go in again. Humph, didn't it just hold a few balls and play with them? As a result, the breeder would not let him touch them again, and said something like bombs and such, which children could not play with. Okay, don't lie to me. If you lie to me again, I won't bring you cake next time. Peter lifted Goo Goo, held it in front of him, and said earnestly, Goo Goo, Goo Goo. Oh, Goo Goo, don't make excuses. It was because you didn't exercise last time, and Professor Lockhart found out. Goo Goo, Goo Goo. Goo Goo looked at Peter in front of him, flapped his wings, called out, and tried to make a decisive momentum on his little face. As if to assure you that I definitely didn't lie to you this time. Well, it's not like I'm running, so what's there to lie about? After all, the cake smells pretty good. Okay, Goo Goo, I believe you. As he said that, Peter put Goo Goo on his shoulder, walked to the front door, knocked on the door 3 times, and shouted at the same time, "Hello, is Mr. Bruno here? Professor Lockhart asked me to find you." Click. As Peter's voice fell, the door opened with a click. Peter saw a short and strange creature that was a bit similar to the house elf gold coin. The only difference was that gold coin's ears were a bit wide like a palm leaf fan, while the ears of the goblin Bruno in front of him were pointed. "Little ghost, why did the master call you here?" The goblin Bruno looked at Peter in front of him and felt that he was a muggle, so he said in a general attitude. Peter obviously didn't care, he just went to look at the various strange things around him. It must be said that this room is really large, and there are many shelves next to it. There are not only some books on them, but also some dark golden stones, grey wood and other things that he can't distinguish. What he could see clearly were some black magic cards, some shoes, sticks and the like. Suddenly, Peter's eyes flashed with surprise. If he saw it right, there seemed to be a grenade over there, as well as a pistol and even a machine gun. "Kid, why did the master call you over here?" Seeing the muggle in front of him looking around with his eyes rolling around, Bruno asked again in a bad mood. He had already completed the production of level 4 magic cards, and was now working towards level 3 magic cards. He had just encountered some problems, and hadn't solved them, yet when he met the muggle in front of him, the goblin Bruno's repeated questions made Peter quickly come back to his senses. Peter scratched his head and said a little embarrassedly, "Mr. Bruno, Professor Lockhart said that I can find you to customize a magic item." "Oh." After hearing this, Bruno simply said "oh" and stared at Peter in front of him. Seeing that Peter was a little embarrassed, he asked, "What's your name? What kind of magic item do you want?" Hearing this, Peter's eyes lit up, and he immediately said, "My name is Peter Parker. As for magic items, I want to ask, is there any that can make people fly? Or can it automatically retract spider silk? Or can it let me defend myself with a shield like Mr. Lockhart's?" Listening to Peter's little mouth talking non-stop, the functions he proposed became more and more unreliable. Bruno's face was dark. Seeing that Peter didn't seem to stop talking, and even seemed to be a little lost in his own world, Bruno interrupted and said, "Peter, shut up. Making magic items is not as simple as you think. Just say 2 to 3 functions. Then," he added, "don't be too outrageous." Hearing what the goblin Bruno said, Peter felt a little regretful. He thought about it carefully and hesitated after a moment. "Mr. Bruno, I want a space, and then I can store a lot of spider silk I synthesized, and it is convenient to shoot it out at any time. Like this." As he said, Peter stretched out his right hand and shook it lightly. In an instant, a white silk thread shot towards the top of the bookshelf next to him. The next moment, the white silk thread flew into Peter's hand with a grenade. "Go, go." Goo Goo on his shoulder subconsciously called out after seeing the familiar round ball, ready to touch it and play with it. However, thinking of what the breeder said before, he did not take any action. Bruno next to him looked at the muggle in front of him with curiosity. It didn't seem like a muggle, but the other party still had abilities different from muggles. This should be a product unique to the new world. Bruno looked at Peter in front of him, his eyes revealing a thoughtful look, and gradually a hint of interest rose, as if he saw a precious magic item. Peter felt a little uncomfortable and hurriedly reminded him, "Mr. Bruno, Professor Lockhart said that he can ask you to customize it. Is that okay?" Hearing his master's name and then seeing the master's pet, Gugu on Peter's shoulder, a trace of regret flashed in Bruno's eyes. It's a pity that this guy has a close relationship with his master. Then, after thinking for a while, Bruno said, "That's no problem. What other functions do you want?" Then, as if he had thought of something, he added, "Just two. I won't care if you say more. I want a function of changing clothes instantly." Peter thought for a while and said, "Of course, invisibility is also okay. It would be best if you could add a function similar to a protective shield or a shield." After hearing this, Bruno thought for a while and said slowly, "Okay, they are three functions of space release, protective shield and invisibility, right?" After hearing this, Peter nodded slightly and then struggled to add, "It would be better if there is a function of changing clothes instantly." Bruno ignored it directly. Changing clothes instantly is very troublesome. It involves transfiguration. It's better not to do it if you can. Then, he asked again, "Do you want to make it into a ring or a bracelet? If possible, make it into a bracelet." Then, one person and one fairy slowly discussed and gradually improved the idea of magic items. Gugu on his shoulder felt very bored, so he flew to the alchemist's shelf to see if there was anything interesting. After a while, "Gugu, I have finished talking to Mr. Bruno. Now we can go." Peter shouted to Gugu who was standing on the bookshelf. "Gugu, Gugu." After hearing this, Gugu called out, flapped his wings, and teleported to Peter's shoulder. Seeing this, Peter looked down at his watch and said to Gugu gently, "Gugu, we will do some running exercise after we go out and then eat after the exercise." Gugu, Gugu. Hearing what Peter said, Gugu hung his head and called out weakly, indicating that he understood. Seeing this, Peter smiled and knew that Gugu was a little unhappy, but this was his job. The benefits have been taken, so things should be done. He is a Spider-Man who does what he says. Then, Peter took Gugu out. In order to let Gugu insist on exercising and practicing magic every day, Professor Lockhart specially prepared a room for him. Even for Peter, a nearby room was specially prepared for him to live and rest at any time. Peter was walking towards Gugu's training room. Suddenly, Peter's eyes focused. He saw a figure walking towards him from the opposite side. Moreover, when he saw the other person's appearance, he suddenly found that he looked familiar, very familiar. Soon, as if he remembered something, Peter exclaimed, "Captain America." Chapter 239 Captain America and the Chatty Spider-Man. "Captain, this is Gugu, my good friend." Peter picked up Gugu in front of Steve and introduced him happily. "Gugu is very smart. It once saved my life." "Hello, Gugu, see you again." After hearing this, Steve smiled and waved to Gugu. Gugu, Gugu. Gugu looked at Steve in front of him and recalled that the last time he escaped from the shackles of the collar, it was still the woman next to him, so he also waved his wings in a friendly manner and greeted. Then, he looked at Steve with expectant eyes. He didn't forget that the chocolate beans Steve gave him last time tasted very good. Unfortunately, Steve didn't understand what Gugu meant. He touched Gugu's head and continued to walk forward. Peter next to him sensed it and laughed quietly in his heart, but he didn't mean to help his aunt. Mr. Lockhart said that Gugu should limit snacks as much as possible. Every time he brought cake, he gave it to Gugu after he finished training. Thoughts flashed through his mind, and Peter hurriedly followed, recalling the exchange between the captain and Gugu just now, and asked curiously, "Captain, have you seen Gugu before?" "Yes, I saw it last time." The captain smiled and nodded, saying, "A very cute dodo." Well, Carter told him that Gugu looked like the extinct dodo. Although he was a little surprised, he also thought of Lockhart's identity, so he didn't say much. When Peter heard the captain's answer, he immediately corrected, "Captain, Gugu is not a dodo. Professor Lockhart said it is a bull escape bird. It is a magical creature with the ability to teleport in space. It is very talented in space." Hearing Peter's correction, the captain nodded to show that he understood. Although he felt that Gugu was cute, it was limited to this, and he didn't want to explore too much. He was not the kind of person who particularly liked to keep pets. Of course, the latter news could be used as a topic of conversation and chat with Carter. Seeing the captain's expression, Peter was a little disappointed. He was still preparing to introduce his good friend to the captain. Before, he had specifically asked Professor Lockhart about the race of the Goo-Goo. Although Professor Lockhart did not tell him, he gave him a book from which he learned a lot of knowledge about magical creatures. However, the talkative Peter immediately changed the subject and asked a series of questions out of curiosity. Captain, I saw in the book before that you fell into the North Pole 70 years ago. When did you escape? You still look so young now. What's the secret? I want to be the same as you. Captain, I met Goo-Goo before, but was chased by someone. Later, I met Professor Lockhart. How did you meet Professor Lockhart? Hearing Peter asking a lot of questions while walking, Steve listened very patiently and analyzed a lot of information from them. This little guy turned out to be Spider-Man. Steve, who had lived in New York for a while, had heard of Spider-Man, a superhero who is partial to justice, but I didn't expect him to be a chatterbox. According to Steve's previous experience in the army, the best way to deal with chatterboxes is not to answer questions and keep silent as much as possible. Because you only need to answer one question, and then he will continue to ask you questions. At first, Peter was a little disappointed that the captain did not reply, but soon, he adjusted his mentality and excitedly told the captain about the good things he had done recently and some experiences. He felt very excited to see the captain, who was his idol. Although his current idol is Iron Man, his admiration for Captain America remains unabated. This is also the common psychology of many young people of the same age now. They have been exposed to the heroic deeds of the captain since they were young. How could they not be excited when their idol suddenly stood in front of them? So, Steve walked while smiling and nodding, saying yes, well done and other words of praise from time to time. This also made Peter very happy. At the same time, Steve's inner affection for Peter was slowly increasing. How could Steve dislike a child who likes to help others, is honest and kind? Well, although he is a bit talkative. Soon, Steve came to the magic training room, stopped at the door, and said to Peter, "Peter, I'm here. I'm going to train first. Just now I heard you say that you and Goo-Goo are going to exercise, so I won't disturb you." After that, he patted Peter's shoulder, as if to encourage him, and turned to leave. When Peter heard this, his eyes turned, and he whispered to Goo-Goo, "Goo-Goo, how about we exercise with the captain?" Goo-Goo, Goo-Goo. Goo-Goo didn't care. Exercise anywhere is exercise, as long as it was not allowed to exercise. Maybe Peter would not pay attention to it when he saw his idol, and it could be lazy again. Goo-Goo thought, nodded and shouted, "Yes, no problem. Well, the only request is, can we not exercise today?" After Peter sensed Goo-Goo's meaning, he ignored it directly. How could this be possible? He still wanted his own magic equipment. While thinking, Peter hugged Goo-Goo and ran quickly to Goo-Goo's training room. Soon, Peter ran to the front of the magic training room with a small treadmill and a big bag on his back. Click. Peter carefully pushed open the door of the spell training room, poked his head, and looked into the spacious training room. Unexpectedly, he saw Professor Lockhart, the captain, and 3 young men of about his age. This was a bit beyond Peter's imagination. He originally thought that only the captain should be training, so he wanted to bring Goo-Goo to train with his idol. As soon as this picture appeared in his mind, Peter felt very excited, but when he saw this scene, Peter felt that he seemed to have gone to the wrong place. Just when he decided not to disturb them and was about to leave, suddenly, a familiar voice came from a distance. "Peter, since you are here, bring Goo-Goo with you." Hearing Professor Lockhart's voice, Peter knew that he was afraid of being discovered. So he pushed open the door with a little embarrassment, took Goo-Goo, his small treadmill, and a large bag of exercise tools on his back, and walked towards Professor Lockhart. Soon, he stood in front of Lockhart, and looked at Lockhart and the captain standing next to him with some restraint. It was as if a child who had just done something wrong was caught by his parents. At this moment, Lockhart saw Peter's performance, and instantly understood his thoughts. Peter probably saw his idol, so he followed and prepared to exercise with Goo-Goo. After thinking about it, Lockhart's mouth curled up, recalling Peter's keen intuition and agility. An idea gradually emerged in his mind. So, he stretched out his wand and waved it lightly. The next moment, the big bag on Peter's back and the small treadmill in his hand slid off and landed steadily on the ground. Then, Lockhart smiled and said, "Peter, do you want to participate in the captain's training like my students?" Chapter 240 Spider-Man becomes a tool. Ian, Remy, Vera, this is Peter. You will all be classmates for a while in the future. Take care of each other. Lockhart took Peter and walked to his 3 students and introduced them. "Okay, teacher." The 3 agreed in unison. After eating, they looked at Peter curiously in front of the teacher. Looking at his handsome face, he was tall and thin, but there was no magic fluctuation in his body, as if he was a muggle. But the 3 did not have any bad thoughts. Those who could be pulled over by their mentor must have their own special features, just like the captain. "Okay, Peter, you can have a brief chat with Ian and the others. I'll talk to the captain about something." After saying that, he turned and walked towards the captain. When Peter saw the 3 peers, the restraint just now dissipated a lot. Remy greeted Ian in front of him in a familiar way. "Hello, my name is Peter Parker. You can just call me Peter." However, when he walked in front of Vera, face to face, looking at the other's delicate face and soft black long hair, Peter's heart jumped slightly. She didn't dare to look directly into the other's bright eyes that looked like gemstones. She introduced herself with some stammering. "Hello, you can just call me Peter. What's your name?" Vera looked at Peter, who spoke very fluently with Remy and Ian just now, but stuttered when communicating with her. Suddenly she smiled, stretched out her hand and said, "Peter, hello, my name is Veritaserum, a student of Mr. Lockhart, a wizard. You can just call me Vera." Peter subconsciously stretched out his hand, touched it lightly, and then retracted it, saying a little stiffly, "Hello, Vera." After saying that, Peter recalled his performance just now, a little embarrassed, wishing that a crack would appear in the ground and then crawl into it. Seeing this, Vera smiled faintly on her face and resolved Peter's embarrassment with one sentence. "Peter, Instructor Steve is usually very gentle, but very strict during training. There will be fighting in the middle. I hope we can work together in the future training." After hearing this, Peter felt a little relieved and nodded heavily. Then, he asked curiously, "Vera, what does the captain usually train?" Remy, who was watching from the side, interrupted directly and said, "Peter, Instructor Steve trains us in close combat ability, cultivates practical experience, and..." While communicating, Peter and Remy, Ian, and Vera began to chat slowly. They had a deeper understanding of the so-called training. At this moment, Lockhart stood in front of the captain, looking at the 4 people communicating, with a smile on his face. Then, he reminded Steve next to him, "Steve, Peter is quite strong. Whether it is strength, agility, or combat intuition, it is far beyond ordinary people. It just happens to complement Ian and the other 2. Let them train well, and make up for the weaknesses of both sides." Hearing this, Steve nodded slightly to show that he understood. Seeing this, Lockhart glanced at Gugu next to him, and the small treadmill on the ground. He extended his magic wand, and swiped it slightly. In an instant, Gugu was pulled onto the treadmill again to start today's exercise. Gugu, who felt that he had been caught in a disaster, cried out in dissatisfaction. But he found that his breeder didn't care at all, so he had no choice but to continue running forward and start today's exercise. Lockhart opened a portal and turned away. Bruno couldn't be the only one to upgrade the Universal Book Cafe. He had to watch over there. "Peter, be careful to dodge the next attack." Steve stood next to the sandbag projecting machine, looking at Peter 10 meters away on the opposite side, and tapped the button with his palm to remind him. "Okay, instructor, I'm ready." Peter felt a little mixed at the moment. Just now he felt that he was being trained by the captain, but after a while, he found that he seemed to have become a training tool. Is it because he is too good? While Peter was thinking, suddenly, whoosh, accompanied by a sharp whistle, a fist-sized sandbag shot towards Peter, as powerful as a bullet. At the same time, Peter seemed to sense something, and took a step to the left, and the sandbag flew past the previous position and flew backwards. The next moment, Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 9 sandbags rushed towards Peter from different directions like arrows, as if to surround him. When Peter noticed it, he saw the 9 sandbags flying at high speed, and turned on his super senses. In his naked eyes, the flying speed of the sandbags became very slow, including the trajectory of the flight. He even had time to look at Vera's eyes not far away. The brain calculated quickly, took a step to the left, then paused slightly, took 2 steps forward, and took another step sideways. The whole process seemed very leisurely, relaxed and comfortable. Well, among them, how much of the factor of wanting to show off in front of girls is unknown. At the same time, the 9 flying sandbags, as if there was no obstacle, went straight through Peter's original position. Bang, 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 accompanied by the sound of the 9 sandbags hitting the wall behind. Peter was unharmed. Bang, pa. Steve clapped his hands lightly and praised him, saying, "Peter's reaction is very good." Then, he said to Ian and the other 2, "Remy, you 3, take Peter's performance as a goal to train your reaction. No matter it is bullets, magic, or other weapons, you must know how to dodge them quickly. You can't just think about fighting head on." After hearing this, the 3 looked at Peter, who was walking over, and nodded quickly. "Instructor, what else do you need me to do next?" Peter replied with some resentment. Originally thought that he could get the combat skills taught by Captain America himself, but was shocked to find that the captain was teaching everyone how to improve their reaction and avoid attacks. And what about him? In this regard, with his intuition and senses that are different from ordinary people, he can be said to be very good. As a result, Steve was a little happy when he saw it. Professor Lockhart was right. Such a good demonstration tool person. If not now, when will it be used? Just use Peter as a demonstration to teach everyone how to avoid attacks. However, facing Peter's question, Steve thought for a moment and said to the 3 people, "You should first do some simple training through the machine to see how good your dodging skills are." Then, he looked at Peter next to him and asked in a deep voice, "Peter, in terms of combat, because of your special physique, ordinary training will not work for you. I think actual combat training may be more suitable for you. Tonight, we have an operation to train combat experience. Do you want to participate?" At this point, Steve reminded, "In the operation, you will definitely kill the enemy. Think it over before telling me." Chapter 241, The Hunt from the New York Temple. At night, in Hell's Kitchen, an abandoned factory. Deep in the factory, the light of the torch flickered faintly, making the whole factory even more eerie. Focusing on the bright place, a black-robed man stood in the middle of a flat ground deep in the factory. Opposite him, 20 deaf-mute people just created by the Hand and Society were looking at the black-robed man in front of them with great fear. They had just lost the ability to speak. Except for the world in front of them, which was still a little bright, there was silence. Even when they came here, they were driven to arrive with sticks. I believe that it won't be long before the world, that was originally a little bright in their eyes, will turn black and white, and everything will be despair. At this moment, the black-robed man opened his hands, and said as if he was enjoying it very much, "Intense fear, mixed with despair after hope is shattered, a good sacrifice. Lawrence, the sacrifice you need has been brought. Later, don't forget what you promised us." Alexandra, the 5-fingered hand of the Hand and Society standing aside, said in a low voice, while Erica, the black air carrier standing aside, stared at the black-robed man expressionlessly. The black-robed man, or Dormammu's follower Lawrence, looked at Alexandra and Erica with some fear. He said in a hoarse voice, "Don't worry, the batch of sacrifices made by your hand is good. I believe we will definitely have more cooperation in the future. It's just checking some traces. Simple." As he said, Lawrence stretched out his skinny left arm with various black patterns on it, and waved it gently. A black mist quickly surged out from his right hand, spreading throughout the factory, gradually covering the deaf-mute Alexandra and the black sky. "Black sky," Alexandra said coldly. In an instant, Erica stepped lightly on the ground, and a blood-colored halo with a strange aura enveloped Alexandra and herself. At the same time, she dispelled the surrounding black mist, but perhaps knowing that the mist was useful, Erica did not completely dispel it, but only about 3 meters away. The next moment, the black mist seemed to sense something and kept surging, and then the scene changed. the mist disappeared, and the factory returned to its original state. No, to be precise, it was restored to the scene 10 days ago. A large number of deaf and mute workers had blank expressions, just like machines making white powder, and from time to time, some armed thugs could be seen wandering around. Seeing this, Alexandra's eyes revealed expectation. Lawrence, a follower of Dormammu, introduced, "Everything you want to know about what happened in the factory that day is happening here again." After hearing this, Alexandra nodded slightly to show that she understood, and then continued to focus on the scene in front of her. He wanted to see which blind man dared to confront and fight. Soon, under Aristotle's gaze, this group of thugs, for some reason, threw their guns on the ground like crazy, but soon, the guns floated in the air and flew in front of the 3 young men upstairs, or to be more precise, 2 men and 1 woman. And Alexandra remembered the faces of the 3 people firmly in her mind, and prepared to go back for investigation. The following scene made Alexandra frown slightly. These thugs fought like blind men, and then one by one, they were knocked down by 3 young men like drinking water and eating. "Lawrence, can you reproduce the sound?" Alexandra asked. He felt that the behavior of these thugs was a bit strange, but unfortunately there was no sound. He could only watch them open their mouths, and could not get further information. "No, we can only replay the scene," Lawrence replied lightly. However, he looked at the branches in the hands of the 3 young men with great interest, or more precisely, the magic wands, with a thoughtful look in his eyes. But the next moment, his pupils shrank. After the thugs were dealt with, a handsome figure emerged, and Lawrence only stared at the ring on his right hand, or more precisely, the hanging ring. "Kamar-Taj, I didn't expect it," Terence muttered to himself, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. "The magician of Kamar-Taj, this is the best sacrifice, to sacrifice to my lord." Then, they saw 4 people talking. Ian and the other 2 dealt with the thugs, and Lockhart comforted the deaf mute, and took him away. After all the scenes ended, Terence waved his arm again, and the scene returned to the beginning. Seeing this, Alexandra recalled the scene she had just seen, and a trace of caution flashed in her eyes. Originally thought that it was just some ordinary vigilantes, but unexpectedly, it involved extraordinary powers. Judging from the posture just now, this is training apprentices, preparing to use their hands and minds as a stepping stone. Thinking of this, a trace of murderous intent flashed in Alexandra's eyes. Then, after thinking about it, she said to Lawrence next to her, 100 sacrifices like before. Kill them, okay? After hearing this, Lawrence raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, "Of course there is no problem, but I want all the sacrifices first." However, Alexandra did not hear that. Although the other party's words were calm, there was a hint of sarcasm. "Too many, at most 30, the rest, I will give it to you, after it is completed," Alexandra said directly. "Okay, no problem." Lawrence, a follower of Dormammu, agreed very readily. This made Alexandra secretly feel bad, but she didn't say much. In short, in the end, whether the other party could get these more than 70 believers was another matter. Then, after a simple chat, he took the black hair carrier Erica away. When Lawrence saw the 2 people leave, the corners of his mouth curled up. This group of blasphemers who stole the power of the gods are also good for sacrifice. Then, Lawrence turned around and looked at the 20 sacrifices with fear on their faces, and a hint of enjoyment flashed in his eyes. Then, his right foot lightly stepped on the ground. In an instant, with Lawrence's feet as the center, dense black lines emitting evil breath began to gradually appear around, and finally combined into a sacrificial formation. Seeing this, Lawrence waved his right arm again, and the black mist emerged again, covering the group of deaf and dumb people. At the same time, a large amount of blood flowed out of the black mist, and the lines around it actually exuded an evil bloody smell. At this moment, Lawrence half knelt on the ground, muttering to himself, "The great lord of the dark dimension, the powerful existence that controls darkness." As Lawrence prayed, a powerful dark energy wave emanated from the surroundings, as if responding to Lawrence's sacrifice. Then, the black mist seemed to be stimulated, and began to expand rapidly. Lawrence's expression remained unchanged, and he opened his arms in enjoyment, allowing the black mist to quickly return to his body. Feeling the rich dark energy in his body, Lawrence nodded slightly. This batch of sacrifices was of good quality, and his strength was restored a lot. If he had not been injured by the magician of Kamar-Taj before, he would have swallowed all the people of the hand. Immediately, after the mist dissipated, he looked at the 20 deaf mute bones left on the ground, as if he had sensed something, and smiled coldly. With a turn of his body, the black mist wrapped around himself and disappeared immediately, leaving only the sacrificial magic circle with blood stains and a large number of dry bones. Not long after, several red flame portals suddenly appeared, and Kamar-Taj mages including Cassilis appeared in the factory, and Lockhart was among them. Master Jonas, what do you think? Cassilis asked the mages who was in charge of detection. Lawrence, this guy, ran away again. Jonas walked to the dry bones, looked at the sacrificial magic circle around him, and said bitterly, this guy has a nose like a dog, and he will run away if something is wrong. Hearing this, Cassilis was silent. Lawrence, a senior Dormammu believer, has sacrificed a lot of Kamar-Taj mages, even some of his friends. Hearing the news that the other party was severely injured, Cassilis was naturally happy. But the other party ran to New York, which made him a little tricky. In order to prevent the other party from making a big noise in his territory as much as possible, he summoned a lot of powerful mages, even Lockhart. Try to solve the other party at one time, but unfortunately, the other party ran away again. At this moment, Lockhart, sensing the wizards around him, felt a little emotional. They are all strong. It seems that Caecilius has brought most of the combat power of the New York temple. Caecilius naturally told him the information about Lawrence. He has now joined Kamar-Taj, and according to the contract, he has the obligation to deal with evil beings like Dormammu's followers. What's more, he lives in New York, and is a good friend of Caecilius, so there is naturally no possibility of refusal. However, looking at the familiar environment around him, there is something weird in his eyes. Could it be that the Hand and Dormammu's followers are also involved? After thinking about it, he walked up to Caecilius and said, Caecilius, I have some information in my hands. I'm very sorry, there was some confusion, but it's almost dealt with. I will update another chapter later, and update normally tomorrow. Chapter 242 Tony Stark's Incredible. In the morning, at Stark Villa. Jarvis, is the space detector ready? Tony stood in the studio, holding a cup of coffee, staring at the armor projection in front of him, and asked intently, Sir, everything is ready. Any abnormal fluctuations will be recorded for later investigation and research. A gentle male voice came, and Tony nodded slightly. Then he took a sip of the iced drink, put it aside, and waved his hand. The virtual projection of the armor changed, and the projection of the armor's mechanical arm was enlarged several times. Then, he swiped his hands, and enlarged the arm again, staring at several larger parts. After thinking about it, he swiped his hand, and cancelled the parts. At the same time, he opened a new projection, simply sketched a few strokes, drew a new part, and placed it in the mechanical arm, leaving a certain amount of space. At the same time, he instructed Jarvis, record it. This space is installed with the vibranium version of the magic radiation jammer. Okay, sir. Jarvis replied gently. By the way, Jarvis, how much vibranium have you purchased so far? Tony asked. Can it be used to make jammers? Sir, we have spent $1 billion so far, but the amount of vibranium we have purchased is still insufficient, and the difficulty of collecting it has increased significantly. Jarvis replied, and then gave his own suggestions. It is recommended to start the second plan, temporarily give up making pure vibranium jammers, and use magic metals or other precious metals as substitutes. Okay. Tony sighed and said, let's do it this way for now, and implement the second plan. He may be rich, but vibranium is something that can only be encountered by chance. Although magic metal can be substituted, it is best to use vibranium to make it all. At this moment, Jarvis's somewhat hurried voice came to his ears. Sir, space fluctuations have been discovered and are being recorded. Then, a red flame portal opened next to Tony, and Lockhart walked out of it. Hi, Tony, good morning. Lockhart greeted. Morning. Tony picked up the coffee next to him and raised it up, saying simply. At the same time, Jarvis also said gently, good morning, Mr. Lockhart. Welcome to Stark Villa. Morning, Jarvis. Lockhart replied. The next moment, he set his sights on Tony again and asked directly, "Tony, the message you sent said that the machine for making gold galleons is ready. Can I see it now?" Seeing that Lockhart went straight to the point, instead of a few polite words as usual, Tony was a little surprised, but nodded and said, "Yes, no problem, Lockhart." As he said, he took the coffee and walked forward, and Lockhart followed behind. Soon, the two stopped in front of an elevator, entered the elevator, and moved towards the basement. In the elevator, Tony asked curiously, "Lockhart, have you encountered anything recently? It feels like you are not in a good state." Hearing Tony's question, Lockhart said helplessly, "I met a difficult guy recently, and it was a bit troublesome. But fortunately, I have found a clue and I believe it will be solved soon." Hearing this, Tony nodded, and the two were silent. After thinking for a while, Tony said, "If you need anything, just ask." Lockhart nodded after hearing this, but didn't say anything else, but his eyes softened slightly. Ding. Soon, the bell rang, the elevator door opened, and the two entered the basement. Just a few steps into the basement, Lockhart saw a slender, even slightly huge instrument. Looking at the various precision parts inside, Lockhart asked Tony beside him, "How long does it take to make a gold galleon now?" "If you make it individually, it takes 10 minutes for one," Tony replied, and then added, "For batch production, the best state is about 60 pieces per hour." Hearing this, Lockhart's brain worked rapidly. 60 pieces per hour, 24 hours a day, non-stop, can produce more than 1,400 pieces. In theory, more than 40,000 pieces should be no problem in a month. Excluding possible problems in the middle, 20,000 to 30,000 pieces a month should be achievable. This number thinking about it, Lockhart asked again, "Tony, how much does this machine cost? Also, if I want 10, how long will it take?" Hearing Lockhart's question, Tony said softly, "The price of one is at least about 200 million. If there are 10, the price may be slightly lower, but it will be at least about 1.5 billion US dollars. And I have to remind you that this is not counting the price of our arc reactor. These machines consume a lot of energy, and we have to buy some arc reactors. No matter how you calculate it, it will cost at least 500 million. Hearing the huge amount of money coming out of Tony's mouth, Lockhart was silent. He is now basically focusing on the magical world, and he is not too attentive to the ordinary world, so the US dollars he has in his hands are about 20 to 30 million. It seems that Hydra should be more attentive. He can't just let it go, otherwise he will provide him with a large amount of money for free. As for the time, 10 machines will take at least 2 to 3 months. Hearing the time Tony mentioned, Lockhart frowned slightly. He naturally wanted to do it as quickly as possible, but 2 or 3 months was still within an acceptable range. However, looking at the slightly large machine in front of him, Lockhart stretched out his wand, walked up to it, and gently touched it. The magic flowed into the machine along the wand. Then, it spread to the entire machine. Lockhart closed his eyes slightly, feeling the feedback brought to him by the magic, such as magic conductivity, magic resistance, etc. Tony, who was standing next to him, looked at the wand in front of him with interest, called Jarvis in a low voice, and recorded the scene in front of him, preparing to go back and study it carefully. Soon, Lockhart opened his eyes, looked at the machine in front of him, and a faint smile appeared on his face. The next moment, he stepped back a few steps, then waved his wand vigorously, and quickly chanted, "Copy in pairs. Copying spell." In an instant, a white light started from the tip of the wand and hit the machine directly, then spread, wrapping the entire machine, as if scanning. Then, under Tony's gaze, a phantom of a machine gradually emerged, and under Lockhart's guidance, it moved to the side. Slowly, with the continuous infusion of magic power, the phantom gradually solidified. A moment later, 2 identical machines forecasting gold galleons appeared in front of Lockhart and Tony. Seeing this, Tony hurried forward, stretched out his hand to touch, and felt the same cold, hard texture. Unbelievable flashed in his eyes, and he muttered to himself, "Incredible, is this 3D printing? No, it's a particle level replica." Or, Chapter 243 Tony, I was actually Versailles. Different from Tony Stark's Incredible. Seeing the gold galleon machine being cast with the copy spell, Lockhart's eyes flashed with a trace of relief. Fortunately, there are not many magic metals mixed in this machine, otherwise it would be a problem whether it can be completely copied. Even so, copying such a sophisticated and complex machine consumes a lot of magic power, and the spell can only last for about 10 days. If the magic power is not replenished by then, it will easily disappear. After thinking for a while, he walked forward and looked at Tony, who was carefully knocking and inspecting the machine, and said, "Tony, make a gold galleon and try it out to see if this machine can work properly." Hearing what Lockhart said, Tony nodded and then shouted directly, "Jarvis, bring all the materials over and conduct a comprehensive test at the same time." After that, he continued to walk to the front, skillfully plugged in the power supply, and then pressed a series of buttons. As the machine officially started, a projection appeared in front of him, with a lot of data and charts on it. Tony next to him asked teasingly, "Lockhart, can you wizards understand these data?" Magic is magical, he had to admit. But he didn't believe that a wizard could fully understand the precision, complexity, and rigor of technology. Without a certain level of scientific training and a lot of experience in using machines, it would be good if he didn't feel dizzy with such complex data. Results. Lockhart walked to the projection, looked at the data projection in front of him, and nodded slightly. Then he swiped his hands to open the various parts of the entire machine. At first, it might be the first time he touched it, and he was a little awkward. But soon, under Tony's somewhat incredible gaze, Lockhart skillfully checked every working process of the machine and the corresponding data. A moment later, as Jarvis brought the gold galleon production materials over, Lockhart looked at Tony and praised, "Tony, the machine is perfect. It seems that you have spent a lot of effort." After hearing this, Tony's mouth twitched slightly. He still remembered that the last time the wizard told him that it was difficult for a scientist to master magic. Because of cognitive conflicts, it would be difficult to practice magic. He could understand it at first. After all, a scientist and a musician have completely different perspectives on things. Well, he has verified this point in bed. As a result of this scene, Tony now doubts whether Lockhart is fooling him, but he didn't say anything. He walked forward silently, called Jarvis, put the material on the machine, and pressed the button. The next moment, a glass cover rose, covering the material. At the same time, some small mechanical arms appeared above the material. They began to cut, melt, cast, carve, etc. It was as if a doctor was performing surgery on a patient, precise, powerful, and complex. As time passed, soon, under Lockhart's gaze, a simple gold galleon appeared in front of him. At the same time, Tony next to him introduced, "This is a basic gold galleon. The magic power of the goblins has not yet been added. It will be infected by magic radiation later, and a certain degree of fine-tuning will be carried out at the same time." As he said, the gold galleon entered a closed space, and only a large amount of purple light could be seen shining continuously through the glass. At this moment, Lockhart was feeling the changes in the magic power consumption of the copied machine. Sure enough, there are certain differences between technology and magic. With the help of the arc reactor, a large amount of energy is consumed, and magic power is also increasing. It was originally expected to last for 10 days. At this speed, it can only last for about 3 to 4 days. But it doesn't matter. He had accumulated a lot of magic power through magic cards before. As long as it is debugged, it can be used to replenish the loss of magic power. Although the consumption is a bit large, the thought turned, and a moment later, a golden gold galleon was picked up by the mechanical arm and placed in front of Tony and Lockhart. "Take a look, it's the same as before," Tony said to Lockhart, but his tone was a little unhappy. He spent a lot of effort to make the casting machine, but the other party copied it with a magic. In Tony's view, this is a kind of irony to himself. He also wanted to see the embarrassment of the other party who had no money. After all, the other party was just a wizard, not the heir of a company. He didn't believe that the other party could come up with billions of dollars in a short time. "Okay, Tony, this machine is good. Give me 10 first. Come to pick up the goods in 2 to 3 months, and pay the money then," Lockhart said. "Tycoon." Well, although the copy spell is feasible, it consumes a lot of magic power, and it is easy to produce unknown changes over time. After all, it is just a spell, not a magic equipment. It's okay to use it for a short time, but for a long time, it's better to use a real machine for casting gold galleons. Besides, isn't the money of Hydra his money? 2 or 3 months is enough for him to control a certain amount of Hydra's power. Billions of dollars. I believe he can definitely come out, if he squeezes out. At the very least, Nick Fury has embezzled so much, it's time to give some of it out, to contribute to the peace of the wizarding world. His shield has always claimed to maintain world peace. If there is a chance, they should really pick up their responsibilities again. Well, it was decided happily. By the way, Tony, you should have some inventory of Arc reactors too. Give me a few, and I'll transfer the money to you when the time comes. Hearing what Lockhart said, Tony looked at Lockhart with suspicion. Can you come up with so much money? Don't fool yourself when the time comes, and don't give him money after everything is done. Although it won't cause much burden to him, it's disgusting. Seeing Tony's suspicious eyes, Lockhart naturally knew what he was thinking. After thinking for a while, he took a few steps back and kept some distance from Tony. Then he waved his wand directly, and in an instant, a pyramid made of gold bars appeared in front of Tony. Then, Lockhart said, "Don't worry, I have plenty of money, isn't it billions of dollars? Give me some time. I have a lot of antique calligraphy and paintings, as well as gold and other things. I have more than a dozen pyramids like the one just now. A mere billions of dollars is more than enough." As if sensing Lockhart's indifferent tone, and looking at the gold mountain in front of him, Tony walked to the front with some disbelief. He took out a gold bar at random, called Jarvis to test it. Then he was silent. Originally, I thought Lockhart could only know some magic at most, and might not be as rich as him. As a result, it seemed that he was slapped in the face again. Looking at Tony's expression, Lockhart's mouth curled up. Of course, he couldn't have so many gold bars. Most of them were copied in advance through the copying spell. The piece that Tony picked up, to be precise, was the piece that Lockhart guided him to pick up casually. It was the gold nugget he had bought before, so naturally, it was impossible to detect any problems. Well, this was a white lie, and there was no intention of showing off. It was mainly to put Tony at ease. Afterwards, Lockhart put away the mountain of gold and said to Tony nonchalantly, "Don't worry, Tony, money is not of much value to us wizards." Tony was speechless after hearing Lockhart's versatile words. It seemed like he had said this kind of words to other people before. When Lockhart mentioned it again, and thought of the pyramids just now, he felt inexplicably uncomfortable. He could only nod helplessly. Then, Lockhart's words attracted his attention. "Tony, have you developed macro positioning and monitoring equipment before? I can use it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 244 Embarrassed Spider-Man Peter. At night, in Hell's Kitchen, a certain unfinished building. At the entrance of the building, the street lights that sometimes light up and sometimes go out add a touch of weirdness to this dim building. "Remy, do you know the magic of lighting?" is the instructor right behind. "Did you make the right choice this time?" Spider-Man Peter, standing at the door, nagging at Remy beside him. "Shut up, Peter." Vera next to him shouted directly. After hearing it, Peter looked at Vera and shut his mouth awkwardly. Who made Vera the captain of this operation? The instructor specifically emphasized that everything should be done according to the captain's orders. Well, it's definitely not, because Vera is beautiful. Remy, who was standing next to him, saw Peter's embarrassed expression and raised his mouth. This chatterbox deserved it. Remy knew Peter's chatterbox nature when he trained with him, but there was no good way. He wanted to use a silent spell or a tongue-locking spell on him before, but unfortunately, he was dodged. Seeing that magic was useless, Remy directly fought poison with poison and directly retorted. He was not a person who would sit and wait for death. After arguing with each other, they still have a pretty good relationship and can be considered a pair of bad friends. Seeing Peter being defeated today, I was naturally happy and just wanted to make a few sarcastic remarks. But when I saw Vera looking at me, I swallowed my sarcastic remarks and changed my mouth to say, "Peter, the battle is about to begin. Use your trash talk tactics when the real battle begins." Well, I couldn't help it in the end. What is trash talk tactics? Peter just couldn't help but open his mouth, but before he could say a few words, he saw Vera's serious expression and immediately shut up, glared at Remy, and covered his mouth with his hand, indicating that he would not say anything more. Vera looked at the two of them helplessly. Peter's arrival seemed to have opened up some magical attribute of Remy, and the degree of chattering increased significantly. Finally, Vera said seriously, "Peter, Ian, Remy, the other party has left for unknown reasons in the last operation. This time, the information collected again shows that there are many deaf mutes and bandits in charge of guarding. We must act according to the plan, try to eliminate the bandits as quickly as possible, and reduce the casualties of the deaf mutes. Do you understand?" The three nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Vera nodded and continued, "Peter, you have strong perception and insight, and spider silk is very convenient. You are responsible for detection, and at the same time rescue the deaf and dumb to prevent them from being accidentally harmed. Ian, you are responsible. Remy, you go soon." After Vera finished talking about her general plan, the three felt that there was no problem, nodded directly, and then dispersed and sneaked into the building according to the plan. Peter looked at the dark building in front of him, thought about it, and pointed his wrist at the wall of the building. In an instant, a white and slender spider silk shot upwards, and then jumped up, and climbed up the wall of the building. At the same time, let go of his perception, and feel the breath of life around him. There is no one on the 3rd floor. There is also no one on the 4th, 5th, and 6th floors. There is one on the 7th floor, but after careful observation, it seems that it is going to the toilet. But you have to be in your heart for a while. It seems that you are approaching the opponent's base camp. Climbing quickly to the 9th floor, you can feel a lot of life inside. After thinking about it, Peter continued to climb up one more floor, and found that he also sensed a lot of life. The same thing happened to the 11th and 12th floors. It was not until the 15th floor that this floor was empty. Afterwards, Peter returned to the restaurant and entered through the side window, carefully observing the surrounding environment while trying to listen to the other party's location. After entering this floor, Peter found that it seemed to have been artificially transformed. Every time he walked a distance, there was a wall, forming one single room after another. Walking nearby and observing carefully, he found that in each single room, there were more than a dozen deaf-mute people working, making white powder. At the same time, there was a gunman sitting on a chair in each single room, seemingly watching over the work of these deaf-mute people, and from time to time someone patrolled outside the single room. After roughly estimating the situation, Peter found a relatively safe corner, stretched out his arm, focused his mind on the Golden Dragon magic brand, and passed the information he saw to Vera and the other two. Soon, Vera asked through the brand, "Peter, are you sure that there are bandits on the 9th to 14th floors, these 5 floors, but not on other places? Also, except for the 9th floor, are the other 4 floors the same as you described? How many bandits are there in total? How many deaf-mute people are imprisoned?" Peter was a little embarrassed when he heard the series of questions from Vera. He didn't think so much about it just now, and he came to report the information when he felt it was almost done. Then he walked back slowly and continued to detect intelligence. Vera, who was on the 3rd floor, saw Peter, who was slow to reply, and a black line flashed across her forehead. How could she not know that Peter probably started reporting before he had detected all the intelligence? He sighed softly and suddenly felt a little tired. Sure enough, the teacher was right, and the bad teammates were the most hateful. Fortunately, Peter has not fallen into the category of bad teammates. However, the instructor was reminded to train Peter in this aspect. After a while, he felt the information from Peter and came back to think quickly. This situation was great for their group of wizards. As long as it is properly controlled, each single room can form a closed space that is not easy to be noticed. With thoughts turning, Vera began to give tasks to Ian, Remy, and Peter through magic branding. Ian and Remy, who received the information, quickly rushed to the 9th floor. After sensing Peter's location through the branding, they said hello. Ian and Remy looked at the 3 bandits patrolling back and forth, and waved their wands directly, silently, fainted to the ground. In an instant, several silent spells and coma spells were cast on the patrolling bandits. Just when the bandits were about to faint and fall to the ground, Peter, who was climbing on the wall, quickly shot out several spider silks to control them to fall slowly to the ground without making any sound. Seeing this, Ian and Remy carefully entered the nearest simple single room and attacked the bandits inside at the same time. A silent spell and a coma spell successfully eliminated a bandit. At the same time, a soothing spell was released to comfort all the deaf and dumb people. Peter released his induction power and felt that there was no unusual movement around him, such as whether anyone came down from the surrounding floors or whether anyone noticed anything unusual. Perhaps because there had been no accidents before, the gangsters in the building did not seem to be too alert. Ian and Remy joined forces and quickly solved the gangsters on this floor. However, they still appeased all the deaf-mute people and asked them to stay in the single room and not go out. At the same time, they brought the knockdown gangsters out and gathered them together, preparing to solve them after the matter was finished. At this moment, Vera saw this scene and nodded with satisfaction, which meant that her plan was perfect and had no flaws at present. Next, it was the gangsters on the 4th floor behind. While thinking, he called Peter to go to the 10th floor for monitoring. Soon, they repeated the same trick and solved all the gangsters on the remaining 4 floors. With Vera's participation, the efficiency of solving the problem was higher, and there was basically no movement. However, what they didn't know was that at some point, a black mist appeared outside the building, as if it had been observing their every move. Chapter 245 Avada Kedavra. Vera, we won so easily, Peter said in disbelief. It was the first time for them to participate in actual combat training. The 4 of them dealt with nearly 100 enemies without any damage. It felt like a dream. Of course, Peter, we are fighting with our brains, not reckless men. Remy next to him said venomously, don't tell me that when you were Spider-Man, you fought purely recklessly. Of course not, I rank very high in my school. Peter retorted, if necessary, I can memorize hundreds of words in a minute. Oh, a reckless man with a good memory, Remy added. After hearing this, Peter wanted to retort immediately. But Vera interrupted immediately and said, well, this operation is mainly because the situation is favorable to us, and the information Peter gave is accurate. Hearing this, Peter immediately laughed. Then, he asked with some confusion, Vera, what should we do next? After speaking, Peter looked at the deaf-mute who was at a loss. Don't worry, someone will come to pick us up. Vera finished speaking and shouted to the outside, Instructor, the mission has been completed, you can come out. Vera's voice fell, and a figure appeared not far away. It was Captain America Steve. Vera, you did a good job. Steve praised, this time you solved the enemy without any damage. Remy, Ian, Peter, you 3 cooperated very well. As he said, looking at the deaf and dumb people around him, Steve took out a black card and focused his mind to reach the location. Soon, in front of everyone, a red flame portal loomed and was almost formed. However, bang, a black mist quickly shot towards the portal. Just as everyone reacted, the portal collapsed. Alert! Steve shouted loudly, holding a shield and standing in front of the 4 people. Vera and the other 2 raised their wands one after another. Peter walked to Steve's side, looking around with a vigilant face, and at the same time released his perception. The next moment, bang, 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 as several darts flashed by, the light bulb shattered, and the building fell into darkness again. Bright and bright. Then, Ian waved his wand, and a ball of light emitting white light emerged from the tip of the wand, illuminating the surroundings, and dispelling the darkness. At the same time, it also illuminated dozens of black-clad ninjas who were sneaking around. Petrify all. After seeing the enemy, Vera waved his wand directly and shot the petrification spell at the enemy. At the same time, Ian and Remy also waved their wands to release spells. The captain swung his shield hard, and the shield shot at the black-clad ninjas, and at the same time he rushed towards the black-clad ninjas. Bang! With a bang, several black-clad ninjas were knocked away by the shield, and the shield was firmly held in the captain's hand. At this moment, the captain looked at the black-clad ninjas whose formation had been broken up, rushed inside, raised his fist, and hit the opponent's brain or abdomen heavily. In a few seconds, he solved several enemies. The opponent was holding a sharp dagger, but before he could attack, the captain slapped his wrist with a shield, and the dagger was also knocked away. At this moment, Spider-Man stood not far from Vera, carefully observing the attacking black ninjas. When he found a ninja approaching, he shot a spider silk at the opponent, sticking to the opponent's thigh in the ground, restricting the opponent's movement. Ian Orimi behind him took advantage of the situation, and knocked him down with a petrification spell. For the black ninjas using darts to attack, Peter also used his strong observation ability to knock them away, allowing Vera and the other two to cast spells without being affected. Captain Steve disrupted the formation of the black men and gradually dismembered the enemy. Vera and the other two acted as turrets, and continued to cast spells on the enemy. Spider-Man Peter protected Vera and the other two from any disturbance. The 5 people cooperated with each other, and soon eliminated all the black ninjas. However, the 5 people obviously did not relax their vigilance, and kept circling around. They did not forget that the black mist that broke the portal at the beginning was obviously not the means of the black ninjas. As a black mist flashed by, 3 figures emerged. They were the Dormammu believer Lawrence in black robes, Alexandra with 5 fingers, and Erica, the black space carrier. Alexandra, these ninjas of yours look good but are useless. HMPH. Facing Lawrence's ridicule, Alexandra snorted coldly and said dissatisfiedly, "Go ahead, Lawrence, you may have taken the things." Hearing Alexandra's dissatisfied tone, Lawrence shook his shoulders, looked at Vera, Steve and others, and said in a frivolous tone, "TSK TSK TSK TSK, look who is here today. A Captain America, a Spider-Man, and 3 wizards. What a wonderful combination." Then he asked Vera, "Little girl, do you know Kamar-Taj? I know a lot of friends in Kamar-Taj. If you are related to Kamar-Taj, I can be gentler later. After all, we are old friends." As he said, Lawrence took off his black hood, revealing his smoky eyes and a face with strange black lines on his forehead. After seeing this, Willa's pupils shrank and she exclaimed, "Dormammu's followers." Willa knew many friends in Kamar-Taj, so she naturally knew the characteristics of Dormammu's followers. Black lines and smoky eyes. TSK TSK, I said it. The portal just now looked familiar. How could the people of Kamar-Taj not know us? Why, you Kamar-Taj are so poor that you don't allow apprentices to use hanging rings, but use branches instead. Lawrence mocked. Alexandra, who was standing aside, heard the conversation between the two sides, especially Willa's exclamation just now. Feeling uneasy, she glanced at the black sky next to her, and then she calmed down. He was still full of confidence in the strength of the black sky. However, he was full of doubts about Lawrence's identity, and he didn't want to associate with a madman. It seems that we should try to cut the grass and eradicate it this time. After thinking for a while, Alexandra began to urge, "Lawrence, stop talking nonsense and do it." Hearing Alexandra's urging tone behind him, Lawrence was a little dissatisfied, but when he thought of the other party in the black space beside him, he would need her later. Looking at Vera and others on the opposite side, his eyes were full of malice. Blade cuts the throat. Blade cuts the throat. Blade cuts the throat. Vera and the other two used the most offensive magic they mastered, the throat-cutting curse. In an instant, 3 red lights shot towards Lawrence. At the same time, Steve swung his shield hard and attacked the opponent. And Peter also shot out Spider Silk to restrict the opponent's actions. Result: bang, bang, bang. Lawrence stretched out his hand and waved it, and the black mist of the drum emerged, instantly forming a shield to block all attacks. With a few noises, all attacks were blocked. Seeing this, Lawrence showed a disdainful smile on his face. After all, the magic power of these wizard apprentices was too weak. Even if he didn't use too much magic power, it was impossible to hurt his fur. The opponent's magic can only work on ordinary people. However, as apprentices of Kamar-Taj, they are enough to be sacrificed. However, tear apart. Avada Kedavra. The next chapter will be updated after 6 o'clock. Chapter 246 Lockhart vs. Black Sky. A powerful shattering spell shot at the black shield, instantly smashing the dark shield. Then, a killing spell emitting a strange green light quickly shot at Lawrence, a follower of Dormammu. Almost instantly, when Lawrence saw the green light, his heart was alarmed, his hair stood on end, and a breath of death rushed towards him. Whoosh! In an instant, Lawrence turned around, and turned into a thick black fog, emitting a dark and evil breath. However, when the killing spell was immersed, it was visible to the naked eye that the black fog shrank by more than half, as if it had evaporated. The next moment, the black fog, which had shrunk by more than half, quickly flew out of the window of the building, as if running for its life. However, just as the black fog that Lawrence turned into was escaping from the window, suddenly, a red flame-colored light curtain appeared. Bang! With a sound, the black fog hit the light curtain, and a large number of red flame-colored patterns suddenly appeared on the light curtain, emitting dazzling light. Zzz. The light shone on the black fog, and with a hissing sound like sulfuric acid being poured in, the black fog shrank again. Seeing this, the black fog immediately turned around, flew to Alexandra's side, and turned into a human form. At this moment, Lawrence was pale, and trembling all over. It could be clearly seen that some red flame-colored marks appeared on his partially exposed arms, as if they were iron-stamped. At this time, he turned his attention to Vera's side, and looked at Ian, who had just made the move. No, Ian's whole body changed, and soon, a handsome blonde man appeared in front of him. Teacher. Professor Lockhart. Vera, Peter, and Steve on the side, exclaimed in a low voice. At the same time, Lawrence stared at the ring on Lockhart's right hand, gritted his teeth, and said bitterly, "The Wizard of Kamar-Taj." As expected of a dark believer who has been wanted for many years, the speed of his escape just now is really amazing, don't you think, Cassilis? Lockhart said to Lawrence. No, to be precise, it should be said to Cassilis behind Lawrence. Of course, but his luck ends today. Cassilis mocked from behind. At this moment, Lawrence heard two voices in front and behind him, and his face was gloomy. However, he quickly said to Alexandra next to him, "Hurry, let's go together. The Wizard of Kamar-Taj will not let you go. They will not tolerate you using the power of the evil god, especially the evil god power carrier named Black Sky next to you. They will never give up." At this moment, Alexandra saw the scene just now, and thought to herself that it was not good. Originally, he wanted to use Lawrence's power to solve the enemy. If the enemy is strong, it would be good to have a fight between the snipe and the clam. At that time, Letty can capture Lawrence and force him to ask for information about how he resisted the evil god's power. As a result, he soon learned that the other party was actually a believer of the evil god. He was very afraid of the evil god's crazy behavior, so he gave up the idea of forcing him. He thought that he would never see him again after he solved the enemy. As a result, things developed too quickly. Lawrence, who had a good situation just now, was hit hard in an instant. Then, before he could react, the other party ran away. As a result, he failed to escape. It seems that the other party had set a trap here in advance. This made Alexandra very uneasy, and what Lawrence said just now made Alexandra's heart tighten. With a flash of thought, she called out softly, "Hikang." At the same time, she drew out the long sword at her waist and infused the key in her body. In an instant, deep red lines appeared on the long sword, like blood. Towards Cassilis, B. Lockhart asked tentatively, "Two friends, Lawrence's matter, you guys should handle it yourselves. I won't bother you anymore, okay?" Cassilis heard what Alexandra said, felt the breath of the evil god's power all over his body, and said with disgust, "Those who use the power of the evil god must die." He now has no good feelings for these rotten fish and shrimp. This group of people who use the power of the evil god think they can escape the erosion of the evil god. But in the end, they still become believers of the evil god. The more power they use, the faster they fall. It doesn't matter if you don't meet them normally, but if you meet them today, don't even think about leaving. Hearing what Cassilis said, he looked at Lockhart with an expressionless face. Alexandra closed her eyes slightly, sighed softly, and then shouted sternly, "Black Sky!" Boom. In an instant, Erica, the carrier of the black sky, clenched her fists, and her originally bright eyes instantly turned dark. Holding the double knives that exuded a dark breath, at the same time, a weird evil breath emanated. This made Lawrence next to him happy. He had no opponent to fight with before. It was because of the existence of black sky. Now it seems that his strength is not weaker than when he was at his peak. Then, he quickly said to Alexandra beside him, "Can we kill them quickly? I sealed the space before, but I'm afraid that the magicians of Kamar-Taj will arrive in no time. If not, leave quickly. There are too many magicians on the other side, and it will be too late to leave." Alexandra heard what Lawrence said, and her mind turned, and she ordered Erica, "Black Sky, kill them." Erica, who received the order, set her eyes on Lockhart, and her black pupils were filled with crazy killing intent. Seeing this, Lawrence showed a cold smile to Cassilis. It seems that without paying a price, he can't kill the opponent today. Immediately, he put his hands together and made a strange gesture and kept muttering in his mouth, "Great Lord of the Dark Dimension, your devout believers need your power to kill the enemies from Kamar-Taj, and I will offer my fresh soul in an instant." A powerful dark force surged from an unknown place, and Lawrence's originally pale face gradually regained its color. However, the dark lines on his face became more and more dazzling, almost covering most of his face. Lawrence knew that when the dark lines covered his entire face, he would completely return to the embrace of Dormammu, the god of the dark dimension. To be more precise, he would become a dark puppet. However, the good thing is that as long as there are more sacrifices, everything will return to normal. Now, let's start with sacrificing the Kamar-Taj wizard in front of him. At this moment, Lockhart ignored Steve, Peter and others who were slowly retreating. Instead, he focused on the black-haired woman holding two knives in front of him, feeling the crazy killing intent that kept emerging from the depths of the other party's heart, and the highly dangerous aura she exuded. Lockhart was extremely cautious. He raised his wand and poured magic power into it. The tip of the wand emitted a dark green light, exuding a strange deadly aura. He focused on every move of Black Sky Erica. Now, as long as she made a move, he would wave his wand and cast the most lethal spell in his hand. The next moment, trample, trample, trample. Along with the sound of footsteps, a rapid chanting of spells continued to sound. Avada Kedavra, Avada Kedavra. Chapter 247 Deep Blue Cage, Power of Black Sky. As Lockhart waved his wand, a large number of green glowing killing curses rained down at the speeding Black Sky Erica. Danger. Death. Erica, who was speeding halfway, had her pupils shrank as she felt the large number of green beams of light shooting from the front, full of the breath of death. Boom. She took a sudden step and stepped heavily downwards. With a bang, dust flew up, the floor broke, and Emily fell downstairs. A large number of killing curses flew towards Alexandra and Lawrence through the dust that filled the surroundings. Alexandra and Lawrence saw this and felt the fatal threat brought by the killing curse. They jumped up and rushed upstairs, as if they were avoiding it or taking advantage of the situation to open up two battlefields. Seeing this, Cassilis would naturally not fall behind. He waved the short stick in his hand and rushed upwards. With a bang, a hole appeared above. Cassilis went through the hole to the upper floor and fought with the two. At this moment, Lockhart looked at the dust all around him and waved his wand. Instantly, a breeze blew by, taking away all the dust. What came into view was a huge hole on the ground and two holes on the roof in the distance. Instantly, he realized that he might have to deal with Erica alone. With his thoughts turning, Lockhart felt the thumping sounds coming from all over the downstairs, and his face was alert, but at the same time he waved his wand. Quickly transform. A transparent ripple gradually spread to the ground with the tip of the wand. Instantly, at a speed visible to the naked eye, the floor gradually transformed from stone to steel, or a harder alloy. Erica downstairs seemed to sense that, if she continued to wait, the situation would only fall behind. Looking at the position where Lockhart was standing, he clenched his right fist, and a light emitting an evil dark aura emerged. Boom. Erica took a few steps upwards, jumped high, and waved her fist vigorously. With a boom, a hole as big as a person appeared again, and Erica passed through it. At the same time, he drew out the long sword from his waist, and the black light flowed on the blade. In an instant, he chopped the figure in front of him. Bang! With a bang, the figure was split into two halves. But Erica frowned, as if she felt something was wrong. Then, a breeze blew, and the dust disappeared. In front of her, a statue was split in half. Not far away, Lockhart was floating in the air, looking at Erica's gaze, with a look of pure darkness and killing, and his mouth curled up. Then, Lockhart stretched out his wand, and tapped it lightly, and a drop of blue light, like a drop of water, fell to the ground. But, in an instant, a large number of blue lines appeared on the entire floor, and then, 6 blue light curtains appeared around Erica, forming a cube, and in the middle of the cube, Erica was imprisoned. Magic circle, deep blue cage. Bang, bang, bang. Seeing the blue cage in front of her, Erica raised her long sword, and chopped the blue light curtain on the opposite side. With several bangs, the light curtain remained intact, but a gap appeared on the long sword. As if sensing that ordinary attacks could not break the cage, Erica put away the long sword, and retreated to the center of the cage. Then, a large amount of black and red mist gushed out from behind Erica, gradually condensing into a black panther, with scarlet stripes on its body, like blood. Roar. The black panther rushed directly towards the blue light curtain opposite and let out a loud roar. Then, the black panther opened its bloody mouth, and a black light ball emitting powerful energy fluctuations emerged from its mouth, and continued to condense. Erica stood by, holding 2 swords, and black light continued to flow on the 2 swords. Seeing this scene, Lockhart's eyes were a little cautious. As he landed on the ground, he infused more magic power into the magic circle. In an instant, the blue light curtain, or the patterns on the blue wall, became more dazzling, as if to show that the defense power had been strengthened again. Then, the Black Panther seemed to sense something, and spit out a dark light ball containing powerful energy fluctuations, hitting the cage in front of it heavily. Erica, who was standing by, held to knives and slashed quickly, and a series of knife lights emitting a dark aura shot towards the cage one after another. Boom. 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 The dark light ball and a large amount of knife lights rushed towards the dark blue cage, and a fierce roar sounded. The dark light gradually eroded the dark blue wall. As the cage dimmed, it began to be mixed with a faint black. Lockhart frowned outside. He could clearly feel that the loss of magic power was continuing to expand. Even if he injected magic power now, it would not help much. Thinking about it, while the dark blue cage was still there, Lockhart waved his wand again. Draw a series of dark blue magic lines in the air, outlining a very complex rune pattern that revealed a mysterious aura. At the same time, boom. There was a constant roar inside the Shannon cage. Black Panther and Erica, one man and one beast, continued to bombard the cage with dark energy. It was visible to the naked eye that the originally dark blue cage became increasingly dim, and the color gradually turned black. Then, bang, the Shannon cage was broken, and Erica stood there, staring at Lockhart on the opposite side in the dark blue flames floating in the air. At this moment, Lockhart looked at the dark blue fiend-fi floating in front of him, and his mouth curled up. With a casual stroke, the fiend-fi circled around, with Lockhart as the center, and dark blue fiend-fi ignited within 1 meter of him. It seemed that anyone who wanted to attack her had to go over the fiend-fi to stop her. Seeing this, Erica looked at the blue flame in front of her with great fear. In her perception, this kind of flame was quite dangerous to her. With her mind turning, Erica held the knife with both hands, and the black light flowed on the long knife, and slashed fiercely in the direction of Lockhart. Seeing this, Lockhart had an idea. In an instant, the fiery flame in front of him suddenly expanded and engulfed the oncoming black blade light. Then, it quickly rushed towards Erica. Feeling the powerful threat emanating from the fiery flame, Erica's pupils shrank. The next second, Erica looked up at the rooftop, as if she sensed another battle. Then, she jumped up, broke the ceiling, and entered the upper floor. At this moment, Cassilis kept waving the short stick magic weapon in his hand, and started a fierce battle with Lawrence and Alexandra. Suddenly, boom. Not far away, a figure broke through the floor, and appeared in front of him. Then, Cassilis sensed that the floor behind him began to melt quietly. In just 1 or 2 seconds, a hole the size of a person appeared. At the same time, his friend, Lockhart, and a blue flame floated out of the hole. Sensing the changes that had taken place on both sides, Cassilis, Alexandra and the other two who were fighting fiercely retreated tacitly and returned to their comrades. Lockhart, how is it? Cassilis asked quickly. The opponent is quite strong, but there is no problem on my side. Lockhart replied softly. At the same time, Alexandra on the opposite side looked at Erica in front of her, especially when she sensed the loss of a large amount of black sky power in the opponent's body. A trace of pain flashed through her. The reason why he was reluctant to start a war before was that he was worried that Erica would lose a lot of black sky power. You know, Erica is just a carrier of black sky and cannot generate energy by herself. Therefore, the energy replenishment depends purely on the sacrifice of the hand, so they rarely let black sky start a battle. Even if they start, they try to shorten the battle as much as possible. I don't know how many deaf-mute people will be needed to replenish the black sky power this time. Moreover, it seems that the enemy cannot be solved in a short time. What if the enemy's support comes? With a flash of thought, Alexandra looked at Ikang Erica in front of her, then glanced at Lockhart and the other man opposite, and directly ordered, Ikang, go, take us away from here. Thanks to just enough stupidity for the reward of 10,100 points. Thanks to just enough stupidity, book friend 201902070012058838, and secretary momming for the monthly ticket. Chapter 248 free is the most expensive. A large amount of black mist filled the surroundings. Lockhart frowned slightly and controlled the fiend fire beside him to engulf it. Soon, all the black mist around Lockhart and Cassilis completely dissipated. Then, as Lockhart's mind turned, the blue fiend fire expanded and spread far away. Not long after, all the black mist on this floor was burned, incinerated, and engulfed. Lawrence ran away again. Looking at the hole in the wall in the distance that was eroded by dark energy, Cassilis sighed lightly. It's okay, Cassilis. Now we have caught the other party's clues, and the other party can't run away next time. Lockhart comforted Cassilis. Thinking back to the sesame-sized positioning instrument given by Tony, Lockhart's mouth curled up. The hand was originally his target. Now there is another dark believer Lawrence. Maybe there will be unexpected gains. Cassilis on the side heard Lockhart's comfort and said, HMM. His frown slightly relaxed, but he looked at the direction where the other party was moving away, as if he was thinking about something. Bang. Cassilis held a long stick, infused it with magic power, and the surface of the long stick was covered with red flames. With a slight bang, the long stick touched the ground, and then a red flame wave spread around, quickly dispelling the space restriction left by Lawrence. Not long after, multiple red flame halos appeared around, and some New York temple mages appeared. Master Jonas, please collect Lawrence's remaining breath to see if you can locate the other party. Cassilis said to Jonas, who was in charge of detection. Okay, I hope to catch this bastard. Jonas said hatefully. His friend was sacrificed by Lawrence himself. Even if it weren't for his friend, he himself would have almost died in Lawrence's hands and become a sacrifice. Soon, Jonas held a reddish-brown disc and walked around to collect the remaining breath. After collecting all the information, Jonas gently drew a line over the disc and a complex rune pattern emerged. Lockhart saw that the runes representing the direction kept changing, and it seemed that he could not tell. Sure enough, Jonas complained, damn it, this bastard has a backup plan. He deliberately set up a lot of auras in other places to disrupt our vision. Cassilis heard Jonas's complaint and sighed. He felt a little regretful that he followed Lockhart's advice and did not bring more wizards to ambush. Next time, even if there is a risk of exposure, just use powerful magic to kill him. Even if innocent people are hurt, compensation will be made later. Afterwards, Cassilis chatted with Lockhart for a few words and turned to leave. Lawrence, the Dark Believer, not only has good strength, but also has top-notch preaching skills, or in other words, his eloquence. Otherwise, he would not have taken him so seriously. This guy's like a virus. If you don't care about it at the beginning, he will definitely cause a big trouble in the end. Hell's Kitchen, a shabby factory. The black mist fell from midair onto the ground of the dilapidated factory and disappeared immediately, revealing the figures of two men and one woman. Then they suddenly separated. Lawrence, Tell me, what is Kamar-Taj? What have you done? Alexandra retreated with Hikang and questioned Lawrence at the same time. Facing Alexandra's questioning, Lawrence looked at Hikang opposite him with fear, thought for a moment, and started to provoke. This time I'm unlucky. I didn't expect that the people who targeted your hand were actually from Kamar-Taj. I advise you to leave New York quickly, otherwise your lives will be in danger. Alexandra seemed to understand what Lawrence said, frowned slightly, and noticed that the other party's breath had dissipated for the most part. With a thought, she gently patted Erica's shoulder next to her and whispered, "Hikang, catch him, don't let him run away." As she said that, she took a step back. He wanted to see if the other party's bones would still be so hard after being caught. He was so evasive and biased. Did he think that he had lived in vain for hundreds of years? Boom. Hearing Alexandra's order, Erica drew out the double swords at her waist and pointed them at Lawrence on the opposite side. At the same time, a fascinating momentum pressed towards Lawrence, and at the same time, a large amount of black mist appeared behind Erica, gradually condensing into the shape of a black panther. The black panther's eyes were fixed on Lawrence, and the double swords held by Erica, black light flowed on the blades. "Hey, Alexandra, I thought we were friends." Lawrence raised his hands and indicated that he didn't want to fight. "I just reminded you sincerely. I have fought with the people of Kamar-Taj many times, and I'm very familiar with their characteristics," Lawrence said quickly. He didn't want to fight now. He was seriously injured by the sneak attack of the blonde man before. Later, with the help of the power of the God of Darkness, if he continued to fight, it would be very likely that both sides would be injured, and the best result would be that he would escape. "Hikang." Alexandra called Hikang, and then continued to stare at Lawrence to see how he would quibble. "The mages of Kamar-Taj are actually believers of gods just like me, but they believe in Vishanti, while we believe in the God of Darkness." Lawrence began to slowly deceive. After hearing this, Alexandra showed a sneer at the corner of her mouth and continued to listen. "For the mages of Kamar-Taj, they will never let go of those who rely on the power of the gods of the Dark Camp, such as you and me, because, in their eyes, we are the best sacrifices to Vishanti. Every sacrifice can gain more powerful power and be loved by the gods. Yes, the great lord of the dark dimension Dormammu did this. So, when he finds traces of your hand, I sincerely suggest that you hide for a while." Lawrence kindly suggested, because New York is their base camp, there are many powerful mages. They are good at playing with space, and they have mastered a lot of advanced magic. Their strength cannot be ignored. Hearing Lawrence's so-called advice, Alexandra's face was uncertain. Leaving New York is absolutely impossible. The dragon bone is still here. How can they leave? However, Kamar-Taj, which Lawrence mentioned, is a huge threat to the hand. It is just as Lawrence said. No, as long as there are a few more mages like the one just now, the hand will not be able to hold on. The thought turned, and then I heard Alexandra, "I know that what you are most worried about in the hand is the dragon bone. There is a powerful seal on the dragon bone. I can use the power of the Lord to help you break it for free." Chapter 249 Chaos Magic Idealistic Power. Kamar-Taj, King Iet House. King Iet House, located in Kamar-Taj, has just been established for less than a month, but it has become popular within Kamar-Taj. The most important factor for its popularity is that you can contact a large number of alchemists and potion masters through the tea house, entrust them to buy corresponding potions and magic items, and even get discounts. For most Kamar-Taj mages, it is naturally the first choice. Besides, it is in Kamar-Taj, so it is quite pleasant to drink tea, so close to here. Well, in Kamar-Taj, most mages have the habit of drinking tea, and this habit mainly comes from the Supreme Mage. As the saying goes, what goes up must go down. The Supreme Mage likes to drink tea, so his apprentices must slowly cultivate the habit of drinking tea. For thousands of years, drinking tea has naturally become a common custom for most mages. At this moment, in a room in King Iet House, Master Dalen and a group of alchemists and potion masters gathered together, drinking tea and discussing important matters. "Dalen, how is King Iet House doing recently?" asked Mage Sanji, a potion master. He felt that with the establishment of King Iet House, things became more complicated, as if the leisurely time was gone. He could just practice potions at ordinary times, but the workload has at least doubled or tripled. Hearing Mage Sanji's question, Mage Dalen took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "The tea house has been very good recently, and there are many people coming every day. Mage Sanji, I believe you should have gained a lot from the potion resources you have obtained recently." Hearing this, Mage Sanji smiled. Although the workload has doubled, the resources obtained have also doubled, which makes him feel a little relieved. However, this is not the focus of today's discussion. Master Dalen, I contacted my friends as agreed. How is the Vincian Book Cafe now? Have you got the things you said before? Master Sanji asked eagerly, which instantly cheered up the three mages beside him. This was a common problem for them. Master Dalen saw that the four of them were focusing on him and said excitedly, "Masters, please rest assured that our strategy is very effective." After our Kingai tea house opened, there were fewer mages going to the Vincian Book Cafe. This is the joint effort of all of us. Well, Dalen, who is an alchemist, has already greeted dozens of friends. Not to mention other potion masters, alchemists, magic plant breeders, etc. Although their number is not too large, their influence is not weak, and it is no problem to cover most of Kamar-Taj. It is more than enough to target a Vincian Book Cafe that has just opened for less than 2 months. It is said that the Wangxiang Book Cafe has temporarily closed down. The upgrade is just a last-ditch effort. At this point, Master Dalen drank the tea in the cup and poured himself another cup. He raised it to everyone and said as if to celebrate, "Don't worry, you will definitely get what you want. Kamar-Taj is not based on pure fighting and killing. We also need to understand the human relationships. As long as Master Lockhart wants to live in Kamar-Taj, he will cooperate with us willingly in the end. Otherwise, Master Lockhart will experience what it means to be unable to move forward." Hearing this, the mages smiled, raised their teacups, touched them lightly, and then drank slowly. There are two main reasons why they targeted the newly joined Master Lockhart. The first is that this Master Lockhart made a lot of noise. He just joined Kamar-Taj and sold a lot of potions, all kinds of them, which made the entire potion market a little chaotic. Later, the Universal Book Cafe was opened, which provided private space, contract guarantee, magic points, magic cards, etc. This series of services was aimed at opening a trading place. It can be said that Lockhart's behavior not only directly touched their interests, it also disrupted the originally stable order of Kamar-Taj, making them feel very uneasy. Therefore, either let Master Lockhart give up all his behaviors, or join them and do things according to their rules. As long as they follow their rules, they will definitely have what they should have later. They heard that Cassilis and Morin had cooperated with Lockhart and gained a lot. The second factor is also a very critical factor. It is the magic knowledge mastered by Master Lockhart. To be precise, the magic system and magic bloodline. They naturally knew Lockhart's identity, although they were curious about which dimension world he came from. However, because it was the supreme sorcerer who spoke up, they couldn't say much. After all, Kamar-Taj has seen people from different dimensions for thousands of years, and even joined Kamar-Taj. What's more, the other party has the approval of the Supreme Master. However, they have studied the brand new potions that Master Lockhart brought out before, as well as the new magic books that he contributed to the library. At first, they didn't care about what Master Lockhart brought out. They were full of confidence in Kamar-Taj's magic system. They believed that the magic in other dimensional worlds had some reference value at most. However, when they saw the specific content, they unexpectedly discovered that the magic knowledge in the hands of the other party was very different from what they had. Even with their research level, they could vaguely perceive the difference between the other party's magic system, or the great potential behind it. The other party's magic system is more inclined to idealism, similar to the chaos magic that is famous in many different dimensions. The reason why chaos magic is famous is that it breaks many common sense cognitions, allowing consciousness to completely override matter beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Resurrection of the dead, immortality, material transformation, time reversal, etc. can all be easily achieved. What's more, Chaos magic is a recognized magic way to achieve the combat power of dimensional demon gods. In other words, it is a possibility of reaching the realm of the supreme mage. How can they not be jealous? However, chaos magic relies too much on talent. People without talent will not achieve much results, and they can't even learn it. And now, Lockhart actually possesses a power similar to chaos magic. Although there is a big gap between it and the real chaos magic, the other party's world has already formed a complete magic system. In other words, it is universal. To be more precise, it allows everyone to practice and lay the foundation for the subsequent conversion to chaos magic. When they knew this, they basically decided to obtain relevant magic knowledge from Lockhart no matter what. In fact, in order to prevent the information from being spread, they all consciously borrowed all the relevant books contributed by Lockhart to prevent others from reading them. As for the other party's promise to the Supreme Mage to contribute some magic books every month for at least 1 year, they don't believe that the other party will take out all the knowledge completely. What's more, the other party's magic system obviously has certain requirements for bloodline. Although they were confident that they could weaken the bloodline requirements through other means, it would be very troublesome at the beginning if Lockhart did not cooperate. Therefore, they tried every means to make Lockhart cooperate with them. Suppressing the Universal Book Cafe was only one way, and making Lockhart obedient was the ultimate goal. Well, they not only wanted Lockhart's money, but also Lockhart's people. Chapter 250 Radiation Positioning. Contract Ceremony. Stark Villa, 2nd floor. Tony, are you sure your positioning is okay? Lockhart frowned slightly, looking at the electronic screen in front of him. On the screen, the entire New York City map and various constantly changing yellow dots were displayed. I have warned you that there is a high possibility that I will fight with the other party, and various energy shocks will affect the positioning. Don't worry, if I say it can be used, it will definitely work. Tony lowered his head and replied, his hands constantly debugging the machine in front of him. The positioning radiation bugs I provided are the results of the latest research. As long as the other party is infected, they will automatically release identifiable harmless radiation. I'm locating radiation, not tools. Even if there is an energy shock, as long as he returns to a normal environment, I can detect it here. Tony explained casually while debugging the machine. After a moment, okay, Lockhart, the other party's position has been locked. Tony looked at the slowly moving red dots and a large number of yellow lines on the map on the screen in front of him, and a faint smile floated on his face. Then, Tony pointed at the screen and introduced to Lockhart. The yellow line is the target's most recent moving route, and the red dot is the target's location. The opponent's current location is in Hell's Kitchen, Boren Building. Boren Building. Hearing the location Tony said, Lockhart muttered to himself, as if thinking about something. The reason why he chose the hand as the actual combat target of Ian and others in the first place. In addition to the fact that the opponent acted too cruelly, the most important thing was that he took a fancy to the dragon bones of the hand. The reason why he was confident that Peggy Carter could continue to live was also due to the large amount of vitality provided by the dragon bones. You know, the 5 fingers of the hand and the society can survive for hundreds of years because they use dragon bones to prolong their lives. In the original plot, the reason why the hand took root in Hell's Kitchen, New York, in addition to the benefits of selling white powder, is that there are dragon bones in the regional kitchen. However, there is a sealed power outside the dragon bones, which they cannot break. They can only wait for the arrival of the future Iron Fist to have a chance to get the dragon bones. So there is the plot of the Defenders. He didn't forget that the main purpose of crossing to the Marvel world this time was to improve his strength and deal with the crisis brought by the promotion of the new magic system. Although he has been studying magic and improving his magic power, his strength has been growing slowly. If he wants to make rapid progress, he must have adventures or precious magic items. At this stage in the Marvel world, there are not too many treasures he can touch. There are a lot of precious magic items in Kamar-Taj, but the Supreme Sorcerer is still there, so how can he steal them? And the Cosmic Cube of S.H.I.E.L.D. is even more of a fuse. He doesn't want to touch it too much now. He can only wait until the Avengers plot is over. In his memory, the dragon bone has the best chance of being obtained. Even if the other party has a seal, Lockhart has a way to deal with it. Even if he can't do it, can't he ask the Ancient One to do it? The only price to pay is to give part of the dragon bone to Kamar-Taj, which he can accept. What he never expected was that the hand would actually get involved with the followers of Dormammu. This gave Lockhart another plan, which was to use the power of Dormammu to break the seal. He didn't believe that when the Dark Believer Lawrence knew about the dragon bones, he would not try every means to break the seal and make sacrifices. You know, for the evil god believers, items with strong vitality and energy are simply rare temptations. As long as they are sacrificed to the evil god, they can get a lot of rewards. As long as Lawrence takes action, he is confident that he can get chestnuts from the fire. This is why Lockhart asked Tony for some positioning tools. Although he can locate through magic, for Lawrence, as long as he is serious, slight magic fluctuations are easy to detect. After all, the opponent's strength is not weak. Therefore, he thought of using technological items, this kind of positioning without magic fluctuations. In order to ensure smooth operation, he even placed the positioning on the hand and the 5 fingers Alexandra. I believe that Alexandra will definitely bring him the desired results. Hell's Kitchen, Boren Building, top floor lobby. In the middle of the hall, there is a huge round table, on which the hands and 5 fingers are sitting in their respective positions. Not far away, Kong stood in the corner of the hall, as if he was on guard against something. Alexandra, give us an explanation. Why did the other party know about the dragon bones? Madame Gao asked in a hoarse voice. The other 3 people also looked at Alexandra, full of doubts and dissatisfaction. Facing the questioning eyes of the 4 people, Alexandra immediately smiled bitterly and said, I didn't expect Lawrence to know the existence of the dragon bones. I suspect that it is very likely that the other party eavesdropped on our conversation before. Alexandra glanced at the Botu next to her and said, Botu, the last time we met, you still remember that you brought up the topic of dragon bones. It is very likely that the other party learned about the existence of dragon bones through our conversation. Hearing what Alexandra said, Botu snorted coldly. What's the matter? You still want to put the blame on me? Alexandra, don't blame me. Don't forget, Lawrence was brought here by you. You can keep saying that the other party is definitely not a believer of the evil god. Now, how do you want to explain? And Alexandra, hearing what Botu said, showed a helpless expression on her face. How could he know? Lawrence would be such a troublesome person. Then, he changed the subject directly and said, don't talk about these established facts now. It's meaningless. The key point is to discuss whether Lawrence should help us break the seal. The other party specifically mentioned that he can help us break the dragon bone seal for free, as long as we cooperate with him to kill the Wizard of Kamar-Taj. At this point, Alexandra paused for a moment and reminded, now is our only chance to break the dragon bone seal. Otherwise, if we want to wait for Iron Fist, we don't know how many years we have to wait. You know, if the other party stays in Kunlun and doesn't come out, we have no way. Mrs. Gao, Murakami and others showed hesitation on their faces when they heard what Alexandra said. They also knew that this opportunity was rare. However, cooperating with the evil god believers, even if the other party said it was nice, would they dare to believe it? Who knows, the other party may also be greedy for the dragon bone. They have experienced the benefits of the dragon bone before. Unfortunately, the last time they obtained the dragon bone, they had almost used it up. Then, Alexandra was heard saying, I know what you are worried about. I'm the same as you. But I specifically mentioned that the other party agreed. This time, we can sacrifice the beast, hold a ceremony, and sign a contract to ensure that the other party dare not go back on their word. Hearing this, Mrs. Gao and others nodded slightly. If this is the case, it is acceptable. As for the so-called Kamar-Taj wizard, just kill him when he comes. The hand has many bases around the world. As long as they get the dragon bone, leave New York, or even leave the United States, what can the other party do to him? Then, the 5 fingers of the hand began to discuss to ensure the strictness of the contract. However, what they did not notice was that outside the window, there were some mechanical creatures like ants lying on the window. seemingly observing the every move of the people inside. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.